Good evening. The Design Review Board public meeting of October 14th, 2021 is called to order. Due to the COVID-19 novel coronavirus and the health recommendations from the Los Angeles County Health Department, the Design Review Board meeting is being conducted virtually with no members of the public present. The public is encouraged to watch and participate from the safety of their homes. The Design Review Board meeting is being broadcast live on Glendale TV, is viewable on Spectrum Cable Channel 6 and AT&T UVerse Channel 99. Meetings are also streamed live in high definition on the city's webpage, glendaleca.gov/live. Also available on youtube.com under My Glendale and on Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire devices using a free app called ScreenWeave and choosing Glendale TV from the menu. Meetings are also archived on the city's website for viewing anytime on glendaleca.gov/agendas. For public comments and questions during the meeting, please call 818-937-8100. Again, that number is 818-937-8100. City staff will be submitting the questions and comments in real time to the appropriate person. Current Design Review Board agendas are available by visiting our website at www.glendaleca.gov. Records of decisions for all projects will be posted online on the Planning Division's website. Please note that any appeal of a case heard today must be filed within 15 calendar days of the Design Review Board decision date. The appeal application is also available online. In terms of a roll call, Board Member Minas is absent at this point in time. Board Member Smith?
Present, thank you.
Board Member Simonian?
Present.
Board Member Chagayan?
Present.
And Chair Welch.
Present.
Report regarding posting of the agenda. The agenda for the October 14th, 2021 regular meeting of the Glendale Design Review Board was posted on the bulletin board outside City Hall on October 11th, 2021, and on the city's website on October 7th, 2021. Next on the agenda is approval of minutes. Approval of the Design Review Board minutes from September 23rd, 2021. Are there any comments or questions regarding the minutes from September 23rd? If not, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I move to approve the minutes as prepared.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Roll call, Board Member Smith?
Aye.
Board Member Chagayan?
Sorry, do I vote if I missed that last meeting?
I apologize. Yes, you were absent.
You should abstain.
Yes.
Oh, abstained. Okay.
You were and then Board Member Simonian?
Yes.
And Chair Welch?
Yes.
Thank you. Next up on the agenda is oral communication. Discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. The Design Review Board may question or respond to the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. I see that there are no callers for oral communication, which brings us to the review calendar. There are no items under old business and there are 3 projects under new business. So at this point, I would like to turn the meeting over to either Chair Welch or to the case planner, Mr. Roger Kiesel, for the first item on the agenda for 519 Solway Street.
Let's proceed with Mr. Kiesel and hear the first case.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. Let me give me a second and I'll share my screen. Can everybody see that?
Not yet.
Billy, did I hear a yes from the other side of the wall?
We do not see your screen, Roger.
You don't. Okay.
No, we do not.
Okay. So let's try that again.
Roger,
Yeah.
would you like some assistance?
No, I'm trying it again. Let's see. Is that successful?
No.
Okay. Sorry about that. It's in here. I was opening.
Okay, now we see it.
All right. Thank you. And thank you, Billy. Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the Design Review Board. The next item before you this evening is a review of PDR 2004418. It's a review of a proposal to construct a new two-story, 2,747 square foot single-family house and a detached 450 square foot two-car detached garage. The residence located on the west side of Solway. On the west side of Solway is located on a 7,810 square foot lot. The project was initially reviewed by the Design Review Board back in January of this year, where it was returned for redesign with a number of conditions. The applicant has revised the design of the proposed residence, and staff is supportive of the project with 2 conditions. I'm just going to briefly go through the slide presentation in its entirety, and then as I proceed with my presentation, I may go back and forth on the particular slides. So this is the location map. If you see my mouse, the red highlight is the site. This is Solway, and this is Chevy Chase. This is an aerial view of the site, or the site in the surrounding neighborhood, I should say. Solway is here. Site plan, Solway is down here. The proposed residence is here. The proposed garage is here. The front elevation, the front and the side elevation is down here facing the driveway. This is the side elevation facing the hillside, the rear elevation, and then just sort of perspective of the rear. Overall rendering of the house. Floor plan, this is the first floor plan and the second floor plan. Roof plan of both the house and the garage up here. Garage floor plan. Landscape plans. material boards, and then a couple photos of the site. This is kind of a frontal of the existing house on the site now. And this is a photo of the site that as you are coming up Solway. So let me go back briefly to the site plan. Sorry. The site plan of the project really has not changed significantly from the previous proposal, and is generally appropriate. The proposed residence follows the topography of the site, where the narrower southern setback is set against the upslope, and the wider northern setback is next to the neighbor. Additionally, landscaping is drought tolerant and consistent with the style of the residence. One of the previous conditions of approval, or conditions of the return for redesign, I should say, was to move the garage closer to the street. So the condition was, here's the garage now, to move it closer to the street this way. The location of the garage has not been moved closer to the street in this design, and this remains a condition of approval for this particular project. The mass and scale of the project has improved from the previously proposed residence. The use of siding, stucco, and block on the building facade assists in reducing the mass. So there are portions of the house here and here that are stucco. There's siding here, and then there's a stone facade, throughout all four elevations. The design has incorporated significant second-story setbacks. And you can see it a little bit on this front elevation. It's kind of most obvious on the roof plan. You can see it in the rendering here, where there's setbacks here, there's setbacks here and here, much of which we're not in the previous plans. This is the floor plan, so you can see in the floor plans where the roof area is. There are significant setbacks. One of the conditions of approval imposed on the previous design was to reduce the size of the house by at least 20%. The house has been reduced from just over 3,100 square feet to about 2,750 square feet, which is approximately 12%. While the residence has not been reduced in size to the extent the board requested, changes to the design, as I've just described, the setbacks and the additional facade treatment, those changes to the design have successfully lessened the perceived mass and scale of the house appropriately. The design and detailing of the site is generally successful. There are high quality materials. I'll step back to a perspective. There are high quality materials proposed, including fiberglass windows. The proposed balcony in the rear, which I will go back to the site plan. Right here, this lower elevation is the rear elevation. And this balcony has been reduced in size and oriented in such a way that it really focuses on the subject site's backyard as opposed to the neighbor's backyard. So that revision really has alleviated privacy concerns. Staff is suggesting that the location of some of the facing material be restudied to provide a cohesive look to the contemporary designed residence. So there are areas on the facade of the house where materials terminate at sort of in random locations, and staff is suggesting that a condition be made to restudy that so that we get facade treatments ending at inside corners, that sort of thing. The board had 15 conditions for the project in their return for redesign last January. I can go over these conditions if you'd like, but they were detailed in the staff report. Otherwise, that concludes my presentation. Staff is recommending approval of the project with the 2 conditions regarding the garage location as well as the facade treatment restudying. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Simoni, you have a question?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Kiesel, in regards to the surrounding zoning, is the property to the north of the subject site zoned open space? Is that what the intent of moving the garage away from that is? Or, well, it's a two-part question. One is what is the zoning? And then second, we'll focus in on the intent of relocation of the garage. But what is the exact zoning of the property to the north?
I believe the zoning is the same zoning as the subject site. So it's R1R.
And in regards to relocating the garage, was that condition based on really the board's original condition from back in January, or were there some other factors that staff has made that recommendation or condition now?
No, it was basically as a result of the board's discussion in January. That the impetus of that may have been just the oak tree location. There's an oak tree in back of the garage. So to get that garage moving a little bit forward and away from the oak tree, actually, I think that was the impetus of your condition. And the condition is included in the current project because that garage was not moved forward. So,
and I'm looking through the new package, and I don't see a survey in there. Is the location of the proposed garage in this new plan in the same location as the existing garage?
It's in the same location as the garage was in the previous project. I don't think it's in the same location as the currently existing garage.
Yeah, now I see it on the previous set. Actually had a site plan that on sheet 1.0 that indicates there was no garage at the rear. Okay, thank you. That concludes my questions. Thank you so much.
Do you want me to stop sharing my screen? Or will this come in handy?
Leave it up for a moment and see if there are any other board member questions. Anyone? Okay, I think we're good. Oh, wait, Mr. Guy.
Yeah, sorry. Also regarding the garage, I guess I was wondering, has staff taken a look at how far forward the client or architect can bring that garage and still make it code compliant? Because one of the corners looks really tight as it is to the property line.
I don't have a specific footage. It would not be very much because you're correct. It would still need to comply with driveway clearance requirements. I think probably at most it would be 2 or 3 feet, but I don't have an exact dimension. I don't have it.
Okay, but the intent from the department is more just scooching it forward rather than completely moving it and attaching it to the proposed project.
Oh,
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Roger, would
Thank
you
you.
mind showing the site plan, please?
Sure. That's a good idea. So what the condition is suggesting is here's the garage here, moving it toward the street. Now, yes, they could move it a certain distance. However, there is a 25-foot clearance that, in the present design would prevent the garage from being moved up more than probably 2 or 3 or 4 feet.
I would presume that the goal here is to protect the root system of the tree. So wouldn't it be more clear for us to talk about moving the retaining wall forward?
Sure. We can make that a condition as well, or maybe the retaining wall becomes the back wall.
The back wall of the garage. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Go ahead, Board Member Simoni.
Looking at the site plan that we were just that you have up, Mr. Kiesel, are we talking about that one tree really at the northern tip of the site, and is that a proper scale, or are there different trees in addition to that, and is there some sort of a arborist report or some sort of a tree site plan or another that locates the existing trees?
No, it's just one tree. It's the tree cited here. And there's, I believe, like a drip line here.
Yeah, because, and I would have to study this for another minute or so, but that tree seems to be at a higher elevation than the garage. And if it's at a higher elevation, the roots will probably not be impacted by the location of this house. And so that's something to talk about, because the tree's shown super small in the site plan, but then there's a 15-foot radius that clips the corner of the house. But really, where does the actual bark kind of go into the ground? What elevation? And that's kind of hard to tell with this drawing that you have up. It seems to be at 205 elevation. Now, I'm not sure if that corresponds with any kind of a finish elevation on the drawings. Well, maybe you could look for a survey while we continue the discussion, and then that would clearly identify, or maybe the architect could tell us what the finish elevation of the driveway is. That would really shed a lot of light, at least from my point of view, on the tree.
Can I add something about the tree? I guess there is some confusion about the.
Not yet. When we get to the applicant's presentation, we can raise the issue at that point in time. Board Member Smith, did you have any questions?
Thank you. Not yet. I appreciate it.
Very good. Okay, so let's go ahead and open the public hearing and hear from the applicant on the case.
Now would be a good time to speak where you were trying to speak a moment ago.
Oh, okay. I was talking about about the tree. So that 10-foot radius that you see, that's pretty much that clearance that the city arborist gave to us. Basically, that's not the drip line. That's the 10-foot radius that the building should be built beyond that point. So pretty much we are clearing that 10 feet. And the garage, Mr. Kiesel is right, is in the same location, except that it's been oriented a little bit more toward the street. And the only thing is different here is that the retaining wall now is pushed more back to clear that space in between the garage and retaining wall. So because we didn't want really to put the retaining, and I mean the rear wall of the garage as a retaining wall, just create that little space between the retaining wall and the garage. That's the only difference.
And can I add something to this?
And apologies, if you don't mind, please introduce yourselves and who you're representing. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Helbert Moradian. I'm Canem Engineering, and I just let our designer, RM Bogosian, is gonna add some more items.
Thank you.
Okay. So to add something about this garage location, there is moving it closer to the street would not give us any positive point, but the owner wanted to have a larger backyard, a usable backyard. So as you can see, our east property line doesn't run parallel to the building location. So moving it closer also would move the garage closer to the house, and basically the backyard would lose its purpose, basically, and the using purpose. But I'm saying that moving it closer, we would not gain anything. That's what I assume. If we move it closer to the street, let's say like 5 feet, 4 feet, or whatever, it's not gonna give us anything. There was a good suggestion about the retaining wall. So yes, we could. If you, there was a perspective showing the garage and the retaining wall behind it. So you could see that it's sloping down, and the hill is sloping down at that point. So we could have the retaining wall and the garage back wall. We could have the same wall. So that way we have that 3 feet. We have basically removing that wall 3 feet closer away from the tree. But as I said, we're not gonna. I don't assume that we're gonna gain anything by moving the garage closer to the street.
Mr. Bogosian, can you present some information about the design for the house and talk about
sure.
the changes that have happened? So.
Sure. So as Mr. Kiesel explained, first I want to thank them because we've been going back and forth past few months, and so we got to this point. There was like 15 or 16 comments from the previous review that we had. So now we got to two comments. The major comment was the massing scale. So we did reduce that by use of the different materials, and also the major setbacks that we have on the second floor, and basically moving the mass more towards the upslope of the hill and away from the neighbor and more towards the hill, basically. So the building steps back and goes towards the upper portion of the hill. And so that was the major comment that we had, and we tried to address it by different means. One is the setbacks, the other one is use of different materials. And as far as the materials, there was a condition about the use of materials. So we will provide details where two different materials meet. So we're going to have details showing how they there would be an indented gap between them. So we would present wherever there was two different materials coming together. So there would be a detail for that. And as far as the facade treatment, so the location of different materials we used. So you can see we have landscaping around the house. So we try to, wherever there is the landscaping, we try to have the ledge stone. So basically, you know, the case of water and all that stuff. So that ledge stone, if we have siding over there, that would cause a bunch of problems for us. And the gutters and downspouts and all that stuff are pushed away from the public eye. They're on the sides and kind of directed towards the landscape. So again, that explains the placement of different materials on the elevations, as you could see. And again, so there was another major comment was the retaining wall in the back. We had different designs. One was just having one tall retaining wall with landscaping underneath and above it. But then the city suggested that we should break down that back retaining wall in two pieces. So instead of having one tall retaining wall, we have two steps basically, and there's a landscaping and between them and on top of it. So that way we're kind of moving away from having that tall retaining wall in the back. And also, as Helbert explained, the garage has been rotated and it's parallel to the building walls. And that's why, as I explained earlier, moving it closer to the street would also move it closer to the house. And that would cause some of the problems. And I wouldn't think that we're going to gain anything by doing that. Is there any questions?
Yes, board members, any questions for Mr. Bogosian? Okay, board member Simonian.
I just had a final question on this tree matter. The gentleman that spoke before the current speaker mentioned 10 feet, but the site plan says 15 feet as far as the radius dimension. Did the arborist suggest 15 feet or 10 feet clearance? That's my question.
So, I mean, I might have misspoke. If it shows 15 feet, it's 15 feet. We just followed the arborist and whatever city arborist confirmed the arborist report. So, yeah, it was not clear for me that it's 10 or 15, but yeah.
Okay, seeing no other hands raised. Oh, wait, Ms. Chagayan, go ahead.
Sorry, one more question. So I guess part of that 15-foot clearance, was it just specifically regarding the garage placement or any construction? Because I would imagine the retaining wall would fall under being prohibited within that radius.
Yeah, I mean, it was building, no building shall be constructed. I mean, that was the suggestion of the city arborist. But again, yeah, if needed, yeah, we can bring back the retaining wall and make it as the rear wall of the garage. That's not a problem. I mean,
Thank you.
Board member Smith.
Thanks very much, Chair. I'm curious, did the garage gain 7 square feet, or was it just an arithmetic calculation? Originally, it was 441, and now it's 448 square feet.
No, the garage dimension didn't change. So maybe in the previous sheets that we had, the square footage wasn't written down in a correct dimension.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so let's move on to see if there are any public callers who'd like to give us their views.
There are no callers for this case at this time.
No callers. Okay. Very good. So I guess we can close the public hearing and move to board member consideration. Who would like to jump in first? Board member Simonian. Board member Simonian, I can't hear you. There you go.
I had you on mute.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I remember this case clearly when we heard it earlier this year. And the previous design was very massive. It was very bulky. It had no articulation whatsoever, and hence the 15 conditions that we propose for the project. And I think we just went abundantly over with our conditions to illustrate and prescribe our thoughts in a very concise manner. And ecstatic that this project has come back in the current shape and form, because it's a dramatic improvement. And as far as mass and bulk and articulation is concerned, I would not have imagined this sort of an improvement. And so I really appreciate the care that the design team has taken to step back the second story, to create the variety in the roof lines, to have a more cohesive window design, to integrate the planters in and around the site appropriately, to have an appropriate fenestration as far as the stone veneer is concerned, to take the time to really design the nice kind of walkways leading to the entry point. All in all, it's a huge improvement to what is there right now. I live off of the Chevy Chase Canyon, and I know this street really well. I've been on the street on walks many times, and what's there now is improved quality, and this is going to be a dramatic improvement. Insofar as the reduction in size, 12%, whether we had proposed a higher number or whatnot is irrelevant from my point of view, because I think it's gone absolutely in the right direction. I really think that the real balcony, as staff kind of illustrated or depicted, has been designed appropriately to minimize privacy, intrusion onto the neighboring property, but also in a way to kind of frame the balcony in an appropriate way onto the design. A couple of suggestions that I'm going to go into is one is just a clarification. The elevations call for wood siding. It's in an R1R zone, so it's in a fire zone, and so obviously fire department's not going to allow wood siding, but cementitious siding is something that we should clarify. That's what.
I got it. Gotta fold it. Not getting. No, you're.
We have somebody that's unmuted themselves in the background, but so I would suggest that clarification as far as cementitious siding is concerned. I don't particularly have an issue with the garage location. I believe if the garage is pulled forward, it's going to severely hamper the very small yard that is being proposed. So any kind of a reduction there, I think, would have a significant impact on the quality of and the livability of this house. The architect or the designer suggested that perhaps they could move back the home and place it on top of the retaining wall, which I believe would be a good compromise. Staff was unable to really bring up the survey, but if Roger has it, we could take a look at it. I have a feeling that the elevation difference between the tree and the location of the driveway finish elevation is going to be a moot point as far as damaging that tree, but we could take a look at it. So I don't particularly have an issue with the tree with the garage location. And I don't particularly have any comments in regards to the materials. I believe they're done well. I like the way they wrap around the corners. I like the way that the planters in and around the base of the house is treated. I do think that the entry needs a bit of work in regards to that stone veneer. It just looks a bit awkward just on the either side of the entry. The entry is right at 15-foot setback. I was going to suggest a porch, but that may not work with the current setback of 15 feet against the front door. And so I think the clear window above the front door should be eliminated and maybe go with a taller door. I would even propose maybe making that whole entryway out of the stone veneer, or coming up with another kind of a door design that doesn't have as many openings as depicted. But I believe that could be improved. But that's my only minor comment. Overall, I do think it's a substantial improvement from the previous submittal, and I appreciate the work that the applicant has put forth. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I believe I saw Board Member Chagayan's hand up right after, so you can go next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I too would like to echo Board Member Simonian's comments. I was not part of the board when this was presented the first time, but just looking at the change from what was originally presented to what it is now, I think is overall is such a huge improvement. And I appreciate that the homeowner and architect took the previous feedback seriously and came up with a different approach, not only architecturally, but holistically. I also don't have issues with the garage location. I think the way the site is oriented, it's pretty much in, where they can fit it. I think as it is, that corner is a little too close to that property line, so I don't think pulling it forward is even going to help or work out. I would agree that if the architect is fine with making the retaining wall part of the back of the garage, that would be a nice compromise. A couple of suggestions that I'd like to offer that I think are minor but can help improve the overall first impression that you get of the house from the street side. So from the front facade, I think the windows that are facing the street are not well balanced currently. There's no hierarchy. So I think if you were to replace the large windows on the second level, like that second story office, and then the one over the stairwell, maybe the office can become 2 windows and then the stairwell a smaller window. I think it would really help break up the overall mass, or even though the second story is set back, it still feels a little bit too prominent with the large windows. I concur about the front door design. I had similar comments, as well as the stone on the entryway. I think it needs a little bit of rework. And then the only other comment I had was regarding the stone, the vertical stone that's basically just under that second story balcony that's facing the front street as well. Currently, it's stone all the way up to the top of that rail. And then on the west side, it's open railing. I think if you carry at least 2 or 3 of those horizontal rails and wrap it around to the front, it'll help break up that mass of the vertical stone element that seems like it's competing with the front entry currently. Those are the bulk of my comments. I mean, just looking back at the 15 conditions and seeing that pretty much every one of them was met, including the rear balcony, etc. I think it's come a long way, and it looks good. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Smith, please.
Thanks so much, Mr. Chair. So I looked back at my comments previously at my notes from this proposal. I agree wholeheartedly with everyone that this is better. I do have some comments, however. We previously commented on the hierarchy of windows, and what we got back was sort of almost all the same types of windows. So I agree with the other board members regarding creating a hierarchy of windows to better express the second floor, so such as 2 separate windows. I note that we talked about the previous entrance being too large. It was 11 feet 6, and inconsistent with the design vocabulary. The current entry, unfortunately, is very vertical on a street of single-story homes, except for the 2 on the corner. So I think that the expression of verticality is a little bit overboard in that entrance, where there is faux stone siding and a pair of side lights that are very, very tall, and a plain door with a vertical handle, and then a transom. All of it leads the eye up too much, and I guess it steps in just under the wire of excessive qualifying as excessive monumentality, but it's just very vertical. And the word that came to my mind was baronial, that it'll look over this little street with single-story homes that are predominantly period revival and a few sort of modest traditional homes. I noted the comment that the owner wanted a larger backyard, when the backyard that you're ending up with here is nearly entirely paved. So it seems like that argument doesn't really make sense. I think the indented gaps are called reglets. And I think what our direction and what the direction of the design guidelines is that these materials terminate in appropriate ways, not just simply a gap. So that aside, I looked very closely at the conditions, and I may be a regulator by trade, but I saw 15 conditions, and I don't see those 15 conditions being met. I was really disappointed that the first one, which was reduce the size of the residence by 20%, was not met. Great, someone's at the door right now. Just a minute. The square footage, it's pretty clear how much it needed to be reduced by, and it simply wasn't. The office that's right at the front of the house on the second floor is 17 feet by 9 feet 6. Also the balcony that's right off of it is about 36 square feet. If those two elements were just chopped off, the house would have a first story presence and a far setback second story, which would follow probably the hillside and help it fit into the neighborhood a little bit better. In providing these conditions, they weren't really suggestions or recommendations. What they were very clear direction to comply with design guidelines. While I see that the design has been changed, the comment, there's one of the conditions is regarding reducing the massing. And it says in the staff report that the massing is reduced by the reduction of square footage. That's entirely not true, because massing and square footage are not exactly the same thing. I have a lot more comments, believe it or not. The house needs to lose another 448 square feet, if I look at this correctly, in order to meet condition 1. I do not see that it does. The overall massing, it's the perception in the general shape and form as well as the size. So that entrance bay being very vertical, collectively make it so imposing and vertical. The overhanging roof at the center of the facade that I think overhangs the clerestory windows, likewise brings the eye up and maintains what would create an elevated presence on the street that's very low scale. So part of the intent of design review is relating a new house design to its surrounding context. As you know, it doesn't mean it needs to imitate the surrounding context, but those concepts are described clearly in the design guidelines as well as in the staff report. And so far, I believe that this design, while on the right path, fails to achieve that goal. I talked about the office, which is reasonably large. I note in the staff report, it says that the building relates to its surrounding context, which would be the impact of a larger building minimized. I don't quite see that yet. The location of the garage was pretty clear. If it could be moved just a little bit closer by using the retaining wall as the back wall, why have a little teensy tiny gap? The fact that these conditions, the numerous conditions that weren't met, weren't explained clearly is problematic to me. I'm trying to move ahead quickly. I note that there are some mature trees on the site that aren't being retained. I've never understood why. The window sizes and locations I know were restudied, but it seems sort of like XOXs, those 3-part windows, and some just plain vertical windows, and that's sort of all we're getting there. So I think that by articulating those windows better to express the lower and the upper stories, it could be done better. The front door the front entry needs to be more compatible with the overall proportions of the house. It's super vertical still. The materials, while a big improvement and obviously in keeping with the current trend of sort of a Nouvelle farmhouse, unfortunately don't really meet the intent of the design guidelines that talk about things, the colors fitting in with the landscape. I have a lot of things I could repeat from the design guidelines, but the biggest is ensuring that single-family design is compatible with the character inherent with the surrounding neighborhood. I still don't see. So the guidelines are considered, it's described in the design guidelines that they're considered the minimum threshold for good design. So some of the early questions in site planning are what is the development pattern in the surrounding blocks? If the intent was intentional opposition, then this has done a good job. I think it could just be dialed down a lot so that it fit in better. The relationship of the buildings to the streets. If the overall design intent of the project is to differentiate itself architecturally, which is described in the design guidelines as being appropriate for a commercial or a civic function, that relationship should be made clear. Because this is differentiating itself a lot architecturally from the community, I think dialing it down would help. The design guidelines, single-family design guidelines under F color say develop a color palette that complements and enhances the overall building design. And it says colors that blend with the natural environment are encouraged. And under number 2, it says the use of the following colors and materials are discouraged. The first is highly reflective materials and colors. I can't really think of what would be more highly reflective than white, and colors that would up the heat. So the black would do that. There's not a lot of black. I think the black is okay, but I think that in order to meet the intent of the design guideline, it would be something that would blend better with the natural environment. So in closing, if 1, 2, 3, 4 of the 15 conditions for the redesign weren't met, while this was a step in the right direction, I can't find that it thus far that it meets what was directed. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you very much. For my comments, I agree with everybody else that the design that's presented here is a significant improvement over the design that we reviewed back in January. I certainly like it much better. In particular, I think that the work that they did with the roof forms really works to create some visual interest and break up the building masses without necessarily appearing too busy. I would note, though, that the largest area of the roof faces to the east and the hillside, so not necessarily well considered for future solar panels, but that's not really our jurisdiction there. I think that there seems to be general concurrence about moving that retaining wall a little bit forward out of the drip line of the tree, incorporating that into the back wall of the garage. But the garage could probably stay in its current location, and I think that that's, as Board Member Chagayan said, a reasonable compromise on the matter. So I think we could adjust the condition that speaks to the garage to reflect that general concurrence of opinion. My main issue, again, was as has been voiced with others. You know, the front entryway doesn't particularly work very well, especially with those little thin stone veneer pilasters that are there. That clearly needs to be reworked. I also had a note, as did Board Member, I think it was Chagayan or Simonian, that said make the whole thing stone. It would work better. And I also concur with Board Member Smith's comment that it has a very vertical presence to it, which I don't think that is in keeping with the overall design elements, and I think it should be reworked a bit. So I think that whole entry area should be reworked a bit. As noted in the condition number 2 about where the materials meet, you know, appropriate corners, et cetera, I think is definitely work that needs to get done. The stone on the right-hand side where it reaches all the way up to the second story. I like how it works, breaking up sort of the lighter colors around there, but it doesn't quite work where it meets the planes of the stucco and the wood. So I think that should be considered to be removed. And if it had more contrast between the materials like the wood siding and the stucco, maybe moving to a warmer color on the wood siding, so that it is more of a natural color, you know, earth tone color, I think might help and reduce the need for that stonework. Because I think it's just a little excessive. I like how it's done in areas, but perhaps could be toned down a little bit. So I think that you know, with that guidance to staff, they can probably work with the applicant on changing that up a bit. Finally, I agree with both Board Member Smith and Board Member Chagayan about the hierarchy of the windows. I think the suggestion of changing the large window in the den to 2, you know, smaller, you know, casement type windows would be a big improvement, as would the window on that stairwell. I think both of those could benefit from being scaled down a little bit, and in the den's case, broken into 2 windows. So those are my comments. So let's see if Mr. Kiesel, do you have what you think what is needed here to adjust some of these the conditions to read back for us?
Sure. I've written some notes, and Chris and Jay and myself can go over them. I'll start, and then you all can say yay or nay or correct them. Okay. So the first condition, I'm just going to read from the staff report. The location of the garage shall be moved closer to Solway. We're basically going to eliminate that condition and instead substitute it for, I'm sorry, I know I wrote it down, but basically make that rear retaining wall, the rear retaining wall moves forward and becomes the back wall of the garage.
Correct.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. The second one, restudy locations and termination points of the various facing materials and wrap corners appropriately on the residence to provide a cohesive appearance. At this point, I'm keeping that as a condition, sort of an overall for the whole house.
Mm-hmm.
The next condition I had written was use cementatious siding instead of wood. That was kind of a clarity issue. restudy the front windows to provide some hierarchy to the window design. Should that be throughout the house? I think one board member just highlighted the front windows, but I'm at the end of the whole conversation, I think I got the feeling like maybe restudy the hierarchy of all the windows throughout the house.
I would support a condition as has been backed by several board members to restudy the street-facing window hierarchies.
Okay, so just the street-facing windows, not throughout the whole house.
Yeah, I agree. I don't really see significant problems. In fact, looking at the side elevation, I see that there's more of a hierarchy there. So I think that's
Okay.
right.
Okay, then the next condition, potential condition I've written is restudy the entryway, including the stone, or including reducing its verticality and restudying the stone location. How does that sound?
That works for me. Board Member Smith, Board Member Chagayan, Board Member Simonian, comments?
If Roger could repeat it, I got lost.
Sure. The condition is restudy the entryway, including reducing its verticality and restudying the stone facade treatment.
Thanks. My suggestion would be to delete the transom window.
Okay. That was another condition that I'll work in with the overall condition. Does that make sense?
It does to me. Thank you, Mr.
Okay.
Kiesel.
And is everybody do we have general consensus on that one?
Yeah.
All right.
It's okay for me, yeah. I think that should be it.
Well, I've got a couple more. Eliminate the office and the balcony square footage to reduce it down to the 20% overall reduction in size.
For one, I'm okay with all the conditions stated until that point. I don't think it's appropriate personally to reduce to that number we had stated, simply because the previous design was atrocious, in my opinion. And we had prescribed very specific conditions to make it abundantly clear to the design team that they need to absolutely redesign this building to reduce mass, bulk, and everything we've described so far, which they have absolutely accomplished. And so I, for one, would make a motion and would support the project with the conditions as stated thus far. And I would not support reducing the house or prescribing a further reduction, because I don't personally think it needs it.
Okay.
Believe it or not, I disagree with that, but I know that's not a surprise. It was clear the neighborhood are very small houses, and as proposed, it was enormous. Now it's still giant, and we weren't really given a very good explanation of why it's still this large. So it's just my 2 cents as a volunteer.
Could I add, there was also a proposal of a condition to provide a more earth tone color.
Right, I haven't gotten to that one yet.
Okay, and then also to add more horizontal railings at the balcony, stone balcony at the front. Board Member Chagayan proposed that.
Before we
That
get to
one I
that,
didn't catch.
Yeah.
So,
Board Member Chigayan, do you have a perspective on the additional reduction of square footage?
Yeah, I wasn't part of, again, that original presentation. I could see how the conclusion was made at the time to definitely ask them to reduce it. I feel like I don't get that same sense with this design, so I am also okay with the conditions without eliminating the office.
okay.
Thank you.
All right, so that will not be a condition. I've got the color changes that I believe Chris mentioned. Are we fine with going with a more natural color palette?
I'm fine with that.
Okay,
And then the railing one really could be a suggestion. It doesn't have to be listed as a condition. Sometimes I feel like the conditions can get a little bit too long.
so we can make that as a consideration.
Right, if the other board
Okay.
members agree.
Okay, and then I had
That's fine.
one last suggestion from Board Member Smith. Reduce, and this is my writing it, not necessarily how she said it. Reduce the eave dimensions at the second floor front elevation. And I think that suggestion went with the whole verticality of the residence. So I don't know whether you want to discuss that more, or whether we should incorporate that into a condition or into the entry condition, or not incorporate it.
I don't think it's appropriate to put it in there because we're already stating for the applicant to work with staff to reduce the verticality of the front entry. In addition, we've already stated to get rid of the high window above the door. And we've also integrated and asked for them to restudy the stone veneer. It's a very small entry. And so when you put those three conditions on there, everything's going to change anyway. So I don't think we should be nitpicking it to that degree. I'm okay without it.
Yeah, I concur.
Okay, so just for clarification, in the condition on restudying the entryway, a reduction in the eave dimension shouldn't be one of the examples that they should do.
Correct. Don't write that down in the
Okay.
condition because you've already asked them to restudy the whole entryway.
I just wanted some clarification on that. It looks
Thanks. It was the eave that's at the center of the composition at the very top that overhangs the clerestory windows that make that second story extremely high in that neighborhood of single-story homes, just to clarify.
Sorry, if I can
Oh,
just say some, yeah, can I say something?
Go ahead. Yes.
Sorry, that was actually one of my notes too, that I forgot to say while I was speaking. Just that it does seem a little distracting in the overall design, but I was trying to get an understanding of where those clerestory windows were spaces they were intended for, and it looks like currently it's going to the bathroom and the laundry room. So I would maybe suggest they can get rid of that and turn it into skylights if they want that natural light still, if it's not like the family room that you can actually use those windows for a view, if that makes sense.
I didn't really have a problem with them myself, but I'm open to hearing other people's opinions. Board Member Simonian, do you have an opinion on them?
I'm trying to orient myself. Which window, are lower level or upper level?
No, they're talking about the upper level, the very top, where there's a little jut up there with some clerestory windows that
I
provide
see.
internal lights.
And a deep overhang over them.
I guess, is it too late to ask the question to the architect if the intention was to have those clerestories for bathroom and a laundry room?
Yeah, it's, I can reopen the public hearing here for just a brief moment to convey that question to the applicant. Mr. Bogosian?
It's facing east-wide, so they're gonna get morning sun, and if it's a skylight, they're gonna get afternoon.
No, it's actually facing towards the, more to the west. I think that's the, isn't that the west side of the house?
I plan, I think, east.
Can I talk for a second? Or
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Bogosian.
okay, so they are intended for the family room. As you can see, we try to give some width to the family room by not actually adding to the width of it. So the laundry and the bathroom don't go all the way up to the roof. So basically, they work. They're giving you light. So basically, the family room gets light from both sides. That was the intention of those windows up there. It's so, and by not having the bathroom and the laundry going all the way to the roof, so basically we're kind of adding width to that space. So visually, you feel like it's a wider space, but which is not actually.
So there'd be like a little mezzanine roof above those two. Okay.
Exactly.
Thank you for clarifying. Yeah, when I was trying to do like an overlay, to me it was landing over the bathroom, so that makes sense. Thank you.
The actual location is over there, but the light goes to the family room.
And I have a question that goes with that. So approximately how many square feet is the living and dining room?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
Yes, she's asking you.
Yes.
Okay. So the first floor is basically 1,400 square feet. So, and the bedrooms and everything else on the second floor. So basically, if you take out the kitchen, so it's about like 1,100 square feet.
So if I can just clarify, there's a very large living room with an adjacent dining area that's open. And then on the second floor, there's another open family room. How many square feet is that family room? Or you can just give us the dimensions if you can find it.
It's 12 feet by 13 feet.
So the clerestory windows, instead of a skylight, would make a reasonably sort of medium.
Well, having the skylight, you get light from the same side. So what we're trying to have is to introduce light from both sides to that space, and which is not that big of a space. So having lights coming in from both sides would make a more pleasant space.
But if I can interject, thank you.
I'm sorry, what?
Thank you. If I can interject, there's a lot of living space area, the living room, the dining room that's associated with it, then the upstairs room, the upstairs sort of family room. So it's not like it's a house that is deficient of living area, sort of public living area.
I know if you kind of break down the spaces, so dining and the first floor being public, then when you go up from the stairs, and that's the buffer zone. It's semi-public, semi-private zone, and that's like in front of the bedrooms. So if the kids can hang out over there, their guests downstairs, and so that's the buffer zone between the public and the private. And you need that space to have the access to the room. So instead of having long and narrow walkways and hallways, so we're making a usable space up there.
Okay.
Making it seem much larger by the incorporation of the clerestory windows, which make the house how much taller again?
If you go, I mean, we could go through this for a long time, but I must just interject. I mean, you got to look at the section on this design. When you look at the section, everything on the left side, if you go to sheet 5.0,
exactly.
You look at on the left side, the entire left side of the house is raised because there's a raised walkway. So it's a retaining wall on the left side, and there's only a 6-foot window for that family room to get any window. And oh, by the way, then they're looking at the upper wall. They're going to get no light from that side. So the designer is trying to get light in from the top as a clerestory. So you can't just look at the floor plan and talk about square footages. You have to look at the overall language as to what the architect or designer is trying to incorporate. And-
I did. Thank you. I see that it makes the only two-story house that isn't on a corner on that block a lot taller.
Well, then
So-
that's your point, and that's what you got to
Yes, so
bring
I
up.
was
And
looking
you're
for
not going to
ways.
support the project anyway, so let's just call
Oh,
it what it is.
Do
You have
a
an issue.
crystal ball, Mr. Simonian?
Okay,
let's hope
okay,
you vote
okay.
yes.
Let's
I take offense at that, but thanks.
I hope you vote yes after that comment.
okay, let's
I'll campaign
let's-
for you to vote the way I want.
okay, let's
You always do.
let us reclose the hearing again. And thank you, Mr. Bogosian, for answering the questions that were posed here. So going back to Mr. Kiesel.
That's all I have.
Okay, that's all you have. All right, great.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
all right, so I don't think that I heard consensus on the issue of eliminating the clear story, but correct me if you think otherwise. Okay.
No, at least
so-
for my point of view, he helped clarify that it's more about the functionality of it. So I would agree that that's better than skylights.
Okay. All right. So
Mr. Chair,
yes, sir.
and I wholeheartedly understand Ms. Chagayan's point. In fact, when she brought it up, I was quickly going through the drawings, and the sections don't show that bathroom having a low ceiling. And after the discussion of the designer explaining the design intent, I think then it kind of shed more light on the situation, literally. And so I do appreciate, the comment that was made, etc. I just feel as though the designer had thought it through. It wasn't just this random placement of a highlight, and it actually does make sense.
Yes, it makes it the tallest house on the block by far.
So can we go
Okay,
back to, do we make a motion to approve with the conditions that Mr. Kiesel, or do we have him read it back?
I don't think we need to have him read it back. I think he has it clearly defined now.
Is there a motion?
To approve the project with the revised conditions as stated earlier.
I
Is there a
second it.
second?
I
I'm sorry?
second it. I second it. This is Mrs. Smith.
Oh, thank you. Okay, a motion was made to approve the project with the revised conditions. This will be a roll call. Mr. Simonian?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
No.
Ms. Chagayan?
Yes.
And Mr. Welsh?
Yes.
Great. Motion carries 3-1. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Okay, as we prepare to move to the next case, I believe, Mr. Simonian, you indicated you had to recuse yourself from this next case. Is that correct?
Correct. Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Simonian. Okay, so we
Oh.
can move to the next case. Yes.
Forgive us. We needed to have the record show that Board Member Simonian left the meeting for both cases. So we'll just make note of that in the minutes. So thank you. We still have a quorum and there's 3 board members present, but Mr. Simonian did leave the meeting. Thank you.
Okay, so to the next case, I believe it is still Mr. Kiesel, yes?
Is, yeah, let me try to share the screen again. Is everybody seeing that?
Yes, we are.
Oh, great. Okay. All right, good evening again, Mr. Chair, members of the Design Review Board. The next item before you this evening is case number PDR 2115513. It's a review of a proposal to construct a new 3-story, 2,740 square foot single-family house and an attached 2-car garage. The residence is proposed on the south side of Greenwich Road at 2936 Greenwich and is located on a 9,719 square foot vacant lot. The lot is zoned R1R. Again, let me go over quickly the PowerPoint presentation, and then I'll review my, I'll continue with my presentation. This is the location map. You see my mouse is hovering over the subject site. This is the street here. This is actually Chevy Chase Drive. Sorry about that. This is an aerial view of the site and the neighborhood. The subject site is here. Again, Greenwich is here, and there's a little portion of Chevy Chase here. This is the site plan. The property lines are in a heavier black line, and where the house is located is this green highlighted area. The front elevation of the proposed residence, the southwest elevation. I also put in the non-colored version because I thought that showed some things that the colored elevation really didn't. This is the rear elevation, the northeast elevation, and then just a perspective rendering. Again, this is highlighted in green is the garage floor plan. So this is the lowest level. This is the first or the second floor plan, highlighted in green. And then the top floor, also highlighted in green. Roof plan. The sort of brown outline are the retaining walls. Section drawings. And landscape plan. The material board, I'm sorry, didn't turn out all that well. This was a copy of it. I apologize for that, but it was kind of a 3D material board that just didn't copy well. And then some on-site photos. Okay, now I'll step back and proceed with my presentation. I'm sorry, my lights went off a bit, so give me a second. Okay, the proposed residence will be located in the center of the site, right here. While the location of the residence is satisfactory, staff has several concerns regarding the walls and the landscaping on site. Oak trees are presently located throughout the subject site, and the proposed project will require the removal of 9 of those trees. So if you look at the site plan closely, and there's a lot of information on this, there are oak trees all over this site, including where the proposed house is going. And currently 9 are proposed for removal. The city's urban forester did develop a mitigation plan to address the removal of these trees, and is requiring the planting of 9 oak trees after the house is constructed. The oak trees will be both 15-gallon and 24-inch box trees, generally located behind and to the east of the existing residence. One of the conditions of the project approval is that landscape plans will need to be amended to include the locations of the new oak trees, consistent with the mitigation plan proposed by the urban forester. Retaining walls add to the overall mass of the proposed development, and staff is recommending to modify modifications to the number, sizes, and locations of these walls. And let me go over them because we have a rethought of one of our concerns. This was the slide showing the retaining walls in brown, and we initially had a condition to basically straighten up this entry stair so that it is parallel to the street, perpendicular to the driveway. We have rethought about that condition, and now in staff's opinion, we can strike that. Additionally, we are though suggesting that this wall right here be moved in toward the house about 5 feet, and that these walls here, one become a low garden wall, and the other one a retaining wall that instead of stepping up, actually is really follows the topography of the adjacent site. Additionally, to reduce or eliminate this area here so that these retaining walls can be reduced or eliminated. That was another suggested concern in the conditions of approval. And then finally, and I mentioned this, there are areas of the retaining walls that again step up with the terrain. Staff really is proposing that instead of the step up, they really at a diagonal go up so that they can more closely mimic the adjacent terrain. And then finally, the retaining wall here that forms part of the stairs, we'd like to suggest using open railings where possible, just to minimize the appearance of the wall and the height. The massing and scale of the project is generally acceptable. The building form emphasizes both vertical and horizontal masses. And let me go back to the elevations. So there are step backs at the first level and the second level. The main entry is prominent within the facade without being overbearing. So that area is right here, and it might be shown a little bit easier on the front elevation. Yeah, this is the entry here. So it's clearly visible, but staff doesn't believe it's a real overbearing, an overbearing element within the overall design. The flat roofed residence also reinforces the contemporary design of the residence. The design and detailing of the residence is generally successful, as the materials proposed reinforce the contemporary style of the residence. Trash is actually located sort of in this area. The best place to see that is on the floor plan. This is the lowest level, and the trash is right here. Well, it appears that the treatment on the facades or on the facade terminate appropriately. Staff is suggesting adding this as a condition, given the articulation of the building and maybe not seeing some areas because of that articulation. So we are suggesting that as a condition of approval. Staff is also suggesting that the design of the interlocking pavers, I believe you can see that on the material board, maybe not. The interlocking pavers are pretty busy, and staff is suggesting a more simplified paving pattern. And then also light fixtures. The design of them should be revised to be more consistent with the contemporary design of the residence. So that concludes my presentation. Staff is recommending approval of the project with the actually, I believe it's 6 conditions now that we're rethinking that one condition about the diagonally oriented stairway. So that concludes my presentation with the 6 conditions in the staff report.
Could I also add that a clarification regarding the retaining walls? The retaining walls that are on when you're looking at the building on the right-hand side, they're added along the side edge so that they can get some light into the living room that's located at the back of the first living level, the first floor living level. So, if it was possible for them to minimize somewhat the retaining walls, that would be a positive move. But, in light of the fact that they are trying to get some light into that room, maybe the board should consider eliminating that condition. Also, regarding the retaining walls.
Sorry, Chris. I just want to. You're referring to this yes. area here for the board.
Yes.
For the board's clarification.
Yes, and then the retaining walls that are shown along the edge of the street. The idea was that they would be the low garden walls, a maximum of 18 inches high. And then if it was necessary to have an additional retaining wall, that would step back the 5 feet on the right-hand side. And that at the stair going up, that the closest wall railing, as Roger was indicating, would be trying to open that up so that you didn't have as many retaining walls visible. Also, along anywhere where they're showing stepped retaining walls, and they could actually follow the natural topography, we would propose that just to really minimize how much of the retaining, as you see along this elevation, so that we really minimize the visibility of all these walls that detract from the actual architecture of the building.
Is everybody clear on that?
Just for clarity's sake, is there a condition that speaks to that? Because I don't really read that in the conditions. as they come out.
It was in the stepping aspect.
Which condition is that in?
Let me read it, because it may not be as clear then as it should be.
It's the second condition.
Okay, where it says that follow the adjacent grade rather than step up. Okay, I see.
Right, right. If something needs to be clarified, we can certainly do that.
And you're suggesting that the condition currently number 1 be excluded?
Stricken, yeah.
And also strike number 3 if the board agrees that having that window is a benefit to the overall design.
Okay, does that conclude your presentation, Mr. Kiesel?
It does, thank you.
Okay. I have a question about the oak trees in particular. What exactly is this board's authority or discretion about the oak trees and how they're being treated here and or mitigated?
Well, the city does have a section in the city ordinance that, oh, I apologize, my lights went off again. I'm sorry, the lights are automatic, and if I don't move and I move a lot and I don't move a lot, they will not come on. So, the city has a section in the city code that has a permitting mechanism for removal of protected trees. So in this case, the urban designer and the applicant of the project went out to the site, and I'm sorry, not urban designer, the urban forester went out to the site and basically evaluated where the house was proposed, what trees were proposed to be removed, and there was general concurrence that yes, these 9 trees needed to be removed. Now, in terms of the board's sort of jurisdiction, you know, certainly if there are, you know, if you see areas of the design that can be revised that would eliminate or would maintain some of the oak trees on the site, that I think is certainly within your purview. But in this case, frankly, there are a number of oak trees sort of throughout this entire site and adjacent to it. So, I mean, staff could not necessarily think of a way to amend the design of the house significantly such that it saved a number of these oak trees, a number of the existing oak trees.
And insofar as the city's staff has determined a mitigation plan, is that within our discretion to review or not?
Well, we provided it as an exhibit. I think it was Exhibit 5. So I think it is within your purview to review that and make comments on that. Yes.
That was a report provided by a consultant to the applicant, though. It was not from the city. So I was a little confused by that.
Oh, right. Well, that was provided, and then the front sheet of that exhibit was the mitigation plan that the urban forester developed. So, and that is basically a site plan of the subject site, and then it labels where the 24-inch box and where the 4 24-inch box and the 5 15-gallon. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Hold on. Where the trees are should be planted. So that's the mitigation plan.
Okay, so those locations were determined by the city's urban forester.
Correct.
Okay. Board Member Smith, you have a question?
Thank you. I do, Mr. Chair. So in the hillside design guidelines, in our comprehensive design guidelines, under F5, 6, and 7, it addresses this issue with words such as maintain existing trees, particularly mature trees, as much as possible. Particular consideration should be paid to existing oak, bay laurel, and sycamore trees. So it is mentioned and in those items.
Correct.
If that helps. So that's what I found in regard to that. Sorry, it was a statement, not a question. I apologize.
Any other questions for staff? I guess Board Member Chagai.
Yes, I'm just wondering, and maybe Mr. Kiesel, you can answer whether this was provided to you, and if not, maybe the architect could answer if it was ever explored, but whether or not any other versions of this proposed house was explored, site orientation wise, in terms of trying to preserve some of those trees, and or design wise.
Sure. I think earlier on there may have been a slightly different version, but it was not significant. And you'll need to. The question is probably better directed toward Mr. Agopian in terms of whether alternative site plans were studied for this site.
Okay, any other questions? Go ahead, Board Member Smith.
I hope help with Board Member Chagoyan's question, which is whether, a smaller house or a house that was, shaped in a U or a C or some other type of configuration where more of those mature oak trees could have been retained. I hope helps focus her question, or maybe makes it part B of my question.
Okay. Is there an answer you're expecting from that, or no?
Oh,
I think it would be during their presentation.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. All right. So, not seeing any other questions from the board, I would like to open the public hearing and ask Mr. Hagopian to present his case.
Ed, you need to turn on your mic.
Do you hear me now?
Now we
Yes.
hear you. Okay.
Thanks.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mr. Gobian, please introduce yourself and discuss your case.
My name is Edward Hagobian. I am the architect of this project. My address is 220 South Kenwood Street, Suite 210, Glendale 91205. Starting from the site and the issue of the trees, as you can see, this site has a narrow frontage. It opens further wider when it goes back, but further you go, further you run into the higher level of the natural grade. So just having a garage in the front and having two rooms in the front, that will occupy an area where are those concentrated oak trees in the front. Therefore, thinking of that, we can design something that is smaller. It doesn't practically smaller or bigger. It doesn't make any difference. Just one garage and two rooms you put there, that will occupy the front of the lot because it's so narrow there. That's one thing. The other thing is that even though that average slope of this lot is not very steep, it's 56% something, but concentration of the slope is in the front. And that condition that was suggested by the staff to change the angle of the stairs from going in an angle upstairs, that is not something that we had the choice or design on that. It happens because we have to be able to reach to first floor of the house, and in a short distance, if we go straight perpendicular to the street, we'll not reach there. Not only that, once we study the zoning code that in front of the R1R zone properties, which is 15 feet to the residential portion and 18 feet to the garage door, nothing can be built higher than 18 inches as a freeboard on top of the retaining walls. That means most of these steps that is going up, they are built in cut condition where we can have retaining walls 5 feet height, and if it's essentially as it is spelled in the zoning code, if the direction of that wall is essentially parallel to the street, it can go up to 7 foot height, but not in a condition of building the wall and put the dirt behind that. That is not acceptable. So most of the retaining walls or the steps that we have there is in a condition where we are cutting the dirt and we are building our steps not to be higher than the natural existing grade. It has to be either below or the same level. And the other retaining walls that we have, as Roger mentioned about the retaining walls that are next to that room in the first floor, that gives the light for a room that is deeper. And if we can keep that, that will be nice. So we'll have a room that has light. By the way, I forgot to mention that whatever we build, just a garage and 2 rooms, they will need a 15-foot high retaining wall on the back. That's the building department requirement. So it's not only the garage is 15 plus 15 foot further back, then the retaining wall that can be 15 foot high. So these are, in fact, the area that we have that oak trees there. I am sure that you have studied that report of the private consultant about the oak trees. Of those trees that are not being removed, tree number 10, 11, 12, 14, 15, 16, these are the highest rated numbers between 0 to 5. Three of them are 4, and 1, 2, 3 of them is 3. While the trees that we are removing, only they have 1 tree that is number 4, and 2 and 3 trees or 4 trees number 3, and one of those number 5 is dead already, and tree number 2 is 2. So in our landscape plan, originally we have considered to have 4 oak trees on the rear in 24-inch box trees, and if we have to add to that, we will be able to add and compensate for those trees that we have to remove, which you can see in the photos of some of those trees that they are so close. Sorry. They are so close to the slope of the frontage of the property that their roots are hanging in the slopes, and I don't know how stable their roots are there. Other than that, the floor area ratio allowed in this lot is 2,915 square foot. Of course, we are building about 2,740, which is, I would say, about 165 square foot smaller than the allowed square footage of in this lot. Now, if in the code says remove as much as less as possible, I have designed a lot of this kind of houses, and this is the worst with the number of the oak trees in the front. Unfortunately, they are right in the front of the narrow portion of the lot, and there is no other way of building any house there unless we say that this lot is not buildable. But we are trying to do our best to plant more oak trees that will be maintained and grow for future, to be trees that their roots are not hanging towards the street, or they are bending towards the street, or they are not healthy. Other than that, I cannot think of anything else to say. By the way, for many years, the design board, and even now, I believe, design board requires the tear back of the upper levels, this is the most important thing that I try to keep with my designs, and I tear back the second and third floor so that the upper levels are not kind of facing the street.
So, Mr. Hagopian, there was a question raised about, did you consider other alternative locations for the house?
Yes,
pulled further back from the street, or
even though that was so obvious for me with all the previous experiences that I have in hillside projects that I have done in City of Glendale. Just first glance to the existing condition of this lot, it was useless to think of that there are any other options to design anything. And this is something that, as I mentioned, it happens when you have a driveway, when you have a garage, when you have a stairs, and you put 2 rooms there, it already takes out all this area that those oak trees are. if we can compensate all these removed trees, we can do it. And as I said, they will be irrigated and controlled in the locations that an oak tree will grow versus in a location that is not very stable. That will be, I believe, a better option to plant these new oak trees on the back of the property. I believe one of those is also in the front, if I'm not wrong.
I have another question, Mr. Hagopian. You had mentioned this 15-foot wall at the rear of the property, and this is abutting what looks to be a patio there. Can you explain what is the purpose of that patio there and why it has to have such an excessively high wall behind the house?
You're talking about the wall on the behind the house, not on the side.
Behind the house, correct.
The retaining wall on the back of the house is to prevent the debris. This is a building code. Debris coming down from the slope and there has to be a 15-foot distance just in case. Of course, after put the retaining wall and the freeboard and the swale on the back to divert the debris in a sideways. After that 15-foot retaining wall, they have to keep a 15-foot distance from the back of the house to that wall. That's the building code.
Do any other board members have questions for Mr. Hagopian? Go ahead, Board Member Chagayan.
Yes, Mr. Hagopian, did you ever explore a split level design for the home to help reduce with the mass and scale?
How do we do the split level if on the back we don't have any light? Then we have to have more retaining walls on the sides to give a room on the back to get a light from there. So we will have additional retaining wall on the sides then.
Go ahead, Board Member Smith. Board Member Smith, you're still muted.
Thank you. Mr. Hagopian, if you could tell me, what is the mitigation ratio? Is it 1-to-1, like we lose one mature tree to the community and it's replaced with one new tree? Or is it 1-to-2, 1-to-3?
I don't know that. That's up to the arborist of the city to make that decision.
But what is being replaced? If 9 trees are being removed, are only 9 trees being replaced?
In this case, if I can step in, it is 1-for-1. There are 9 trees proposed for removal, and the mitigation plan that the urban forester suggested was the planting of 9 trees, 4 of which are 24-inch box and 5 of which are 15-gallon.
So if one of those doesn't thrive, then the 9 trees have been replaced with 8, correct?
Well, yes. Landscaping is part of the overall DRB approval, and so, should new trees not survive, they will need to be replaced for a period of time. And I believe it's either 2 or 5 years. Yes.
Thank you very much. So Mr. Hagopian explained that the new trees will be irrigated. Is that true?
Yes.
So normally oak trees don't have irrigation, but they are established very briefly using water.
Well, maybe it will be done by what is called the kind of irrigation,
Drip irrigation, Mr. Hagopian?
irrigation, yes, drip irrigation, yeah.
And did you consider a V-shaped rear retaining wall? Was that a possibility, V-shaped or some other shape, so it didn't create that large 15-foot deep backyard area? For the, you had described it as stopping the mud flow.
What is the V-shaped wall? I don't know that.
A V shape is like this instead of a large square shape. A V, the letter V, like Victor.
V in the plan or V in the elevation?
V in plan. Thank you for asking.
If it's in the V shape, the distance from the sharp end of that V to the house can be 15 feet, but the rest of it cannot. It cannot gradually come closer to the house. It should be 15 feet parallel to the house.
Okay, so a minimum of 15 feet. That
Yes.
sort of answers it. Thank you.
You know,
So, Mr. Hug-
I'm sorry, if I could break in for 1 second.
Sure.
I did want to make clear that we received, I think, between 6 and 8 emails from neighbors regarding the project. A couple of them were in support. The ones that were not were mostly concerned about the oak trees. So just, you all should have gotten them, but I wanted to make sure that that was clear in everybody's mind. Thanks.
Thank you.
One more question for Mr. Hagopian regarding that rear retaining wall. Understanding that you have to maintain a certain distance from the home to achieve your H/2. Did you, what about 2 walls instead if you were to step it and add more planter area?
That's a very interesting question, and the answer is that when you have a slope above the, I would say, 45%, the second wall doesn't do any good. Doesn't help. We can make it like the code says, we can make it a 7 foot with 8 foot or 3 5 foots or combination of those numbers. But when it's a steep slope, the second wall doesn't work. I don't know how to explain it to you, but that I have experienced this many, many times with my projects. If the slope is like about 25 to 30%, yes, but once it's 50%, no.
Right. Is that due to the type of soil or the type of foundation
No,
that
it's
would
not
be?
the type of the soil, because between 2 retaining walls, you can have maximum of 2-to-1 slope, not 1-to-1, not
Right.
1.5 to 1. And between one wall and no wall, that is not governed by zoning code, that's governed by engineering code. If the soil report allows, we can go with even 1-to-1. But between 2 walls, it has to be 1.5 to 1 to 2-to-1 slope. And that 2-to-1 slope, when the 50% slope is steeper than 2-to-1, then the second wall doesn't do any good.
Right. It would need to be graded in order to
Yes.
to make it work. Right. But it's
Yes.
still achievable.
Yeah, but it's useless. It's more grading,
More grading. Understood.
more
Yeah.
grading
Just
and more for nothing.
well,
And that will take away more. It will come closer to the existing oak trees on top of the property. Why to do that?
understood.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Hagopian? Okay, so let's go ahead and open it up for public comments.
Say one more thing, very short.
Sure.
The house next to this house, we designed that like 9 years ago, and it's built. It's almost the same style of the contemporary concrete block, glass, and stucco, and it worked very nice.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gopian. Do we have callers on the matter?
Yes, we do. We have one caller, Mr. Victor Perano.
Hello.
Mr. Perano, you're live on the air with the Design Review Board.
Yes, how you doing, folks?
Yes, hello. You're live on the air with the Design Review Board.
Okay, hi, how you doing? My main concern is was listening to the architect. I've been living here almost a little over 15 years, and these trees are very solid. Even though the roots are coming out, like you said, they're very solid. These are 100-year-old trees that we're talking about. This is history. You know, and to me, I've heard my neighbors that have been here before me, they say that a lot of people have tried to build on that lot and been unsuccessful. I do not know why right now, you know, the plans are changing, what things are changing. I don't understand. You know, right now we have a lot of issues with, I mean, this is, like I said, 100-year-old trees. You're going to be planting brand new trees that will take 100 years to get this majestic as the ones that we have right now? I don't understand. That's my opinion.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your call. Are there any other callers?
There are no other callers.
Okay. I think the normal protocol is to give the applicant a rebuttal time here. So, Mr. Gopian, anything to add?
I would like to ask my son if he wants to talk. Armin?
Turn on my mic. No, I'm strictly note taker and observer today. But you know, we've been closely designing this project. Obviously, many years of experience. So I believe mitigation measures have been placed by the city arborist. And we go what the reports would say and follow direction from city staff and so on. So not much to add at this point. Thank you.
Okay.
As a rebuttaling, may I say just a few words that I have been involved in this kind of projects a lot. And criticizing is easy, but practically working something nice takes a lot of effort. I like the oak trees. I really like the oak trees. And I have some friends that they have oak trees in their house and they complain on all the time. This leaves are falling. Says you should appreciate that oak tree. But in this condition, in this situation, they are right in front of the property in that narrow land of opportunity to build something. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. With that, unless there have been any new callers, we will go ahead and close the public hearing and move towards board member deliberations. Yes, go ahead.
Excuse me, Chair Welch. There is one more caller that just came through. Mr. Greg Anderson. Mr. Greg Anderson, you're live on the air with the Design Review Board.
Hello, thanks for taking the call. I just wanted to add that we're the neighbor right next to 2936, and we have a lot of concerns about the building and the construction as far as the debris and dust and that will happen during this is the hill is right next to us, and there are trees that are technically on 2936 property, but they hang over our property, so it's very close. And we remember very well the construction of the house that the architect here also designed up the street, because it was a major inconvenience for our street. There was a lot of early morning traffic that blocked up the street. There was debris everywhere. There was construction workers or people that were working on the house that were there at all hours, sleeping in cars, and leaving a lot of trash everywhere. It was a quality of life on this street during that time period had declined, and we're very concerned about what is happening here and so close to our property. And when we purchased the house, been here for 14 years, we were told by our agent that sold us the house that this lot also would not be able to be built on because of the preserved oak, and also the previous owner of the property, the gentleman, we had spoken to him several times when he would come by to do brush clearance once a year, and he also mentioned that the area could not be built on, or had issues, been denied building on it in the past. So for us, this is causing us a lot of concern and anxiety, and I don't know I just wanted to voice my opinion on what's going on here and how we're affected and how we're feeling about this.
May I?
Okay, very good. Thank you, sir. Mr. Hagobian, I'll give you 1 minute again this time if you can make it fast.
I sympathize with that gentleman because we had a very lousy contractor in that project, and that lot was much steeper than this one, very difficult to work. But we'll try to somehow control all this. For the dust, will be always irrigated, cleaned, and I specifically will mention to the owner to work with the contractor that will take care of these issues so the neighbors will not be complaining, and hopefully that will happen.
Okay, thank you. Any other callers? Lilia? Okay. All right, so now we will...
Mr. Welsh, can I also break in real quick?
Yes, you may.
The city also has hours where construction can happen and where construction is prohibited. So generally work can begin at 7 in the morning and end at 7 at night under most circumstances. So work shouldn't be occurring outside of those time periods. So, fast forward a year from now, if the project gets approved and if there's a building permit, active building permit, the neighbors, if they're experiencing construction noise at 9 o'clock at night, that really should not happen, and they can call the city to complain about it, and we will review and act on that.
Very good, thank you. Okay, Board Member Chagayan, you have a question for staff or for the applicant?
Yes, I was just going to ask staff if they can touch on whether or not the statements that the previous caller heard were in fact accurate in terms of, was this property ever brought to the city's attention and been denied? Or was it just...
Not to my knowledge, no.
But I believe that under previous city ordinances, there were restrictions and you couldn't build on a slope of greater than a certain percentage. Is that not correct in the past? Without a conditional use permit or something?
Right, I think that's what you were referring to. Previously, and this has been a number of years now, sites that were over a certain average current slope, or sites that a project was proposed and that project created grading over a certain amount, or the final thing was a site that was below a specific lot width. Those three conditions required approval of a conditional use permit. that is no longer a requirement.
Thank you. Okay, so now I will officially close the public hearing and move it to board member deliberations. Board member Smith, would you like to lead us off?
Sure. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I will open my few remarks with, I grew up in a neighborhood that was, the landscape designer was Dan Kiley, and the neighborhood, the entire tract was designed to take out as few trees as possible. And the resulting designs were C-shaped, U-shaped, some were square donuts with atria and giant trees, and it was a very important character defining feature. The neighborhood was built between 1949 and 1961, and it's listed in the National Register, and the landscaping is a really important character defining feature and part of the setting. And it should be recognized that in this case, those 100-year-old oaks, or however old they may be, are a really important part of the setting and of the neighborhood. And I have some suggestions to go with that. I went through the design guidelines and found some things for the hillside design guidelines. Just the first thing in site planning says it involves a careful analysis of the opportunities and constraints of the site, including existing site features such as mature trees, topography, and drainage patterns. I think we got an answer to that, but it feels a little bit like this is what we wanted, so this is what we're doing. That's just my interpretation. Under that site planning item, A, building location, it is recommended that building into the hillside to diminish the visual impact of the scale and mass is encouraged, even if grading can be may be required as a result. Sorry, I'm trying to move forward on these. Substantial grading in hillside areas to alter landforms is strongly discouraged. That's under yards and usable space. C, sorry, it's hard to move around in this while I do this. One more second. I will explain, I'm very disappointed in the mitigation ratio of just 1-for-1 and the description of 24-inch box trees and some 15-gallon oaks. Those cost like $30 to $50 and they die really easily. They're not even as big around as your thumb. So the design of the building should assist in diminishing how the scale and mass appears, especially when viewed from the street. I don't have a lot of comments. It does seem regimental in its verticality and horizontality. I don't have a lot of ideas to reduce that. I had already mentioned what the the concept was for maintaining oak trees. That's under landscape design. And unfortunately, I think I'm divining this from others' comments, but I just feel like what we're reviewing is the house they wanted without really a lot of the homeowner or owner wanted, without a lot of consideration of reducing its size or anything in order to accommodate those oak trees. So I was disappointed and don't feel that really closely fits the design guidelines. Other concepts in the design guidelines are minimizing the use of retaining walls, especially those visible from the street. I think staff is trying to address that. Other than not approving the project, I don't know how we could minimize them more. I think they need to, the color and the material needs to really fit into the setting. It does say under retaining walls that the use of retaining walls to create backyards in hillside areas is not appropriate. However, I understand that 15-foot limit that we were that was described. Also under the same thing, it says mature trees add to neighborhood character. It says maintaining existing trees particularly mature trees should be done as much as possible. Particular consideration should be paid to existing oaks. And just saying there's a mitigation measure, we're going to do this, this is the minimum, doesn't really feel to me in actuality like particular consideration being paid. Trying to move ahead in my teeny tiny computer. I think the oak trees are a big issue. I know that lots of dump trucks are going to be going up and down the hill, and it's horrible for neighbors. I know that construction hours absolutely need to be observed. The more dump trucks going down the hill that are overladen, the bigger the chances for horrendous accidents, as have happened a lot in Beverly Hills the last 20 years. I like the idea of considering more of a split level. My concept would be to reduce the size of the house if it would retain any trees. We didn't really receive adequate information to be able to figure that out on our own, but I'm going to make some recommendations later about the sizes of the boxes and the ratio. So I defer to my other fellow board members.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Chagayan.
Thank you. So I just want to start off by, acknowledging that, yes, the site is clearly very challenging. Hillside projects always are. This one in particular, with the added component of mature oak trees towards the front of the lot, as Mr. Hagopian said, is particularly challenging. I asked the questions whether or not they were explored in, if other options were explored, and I respect Mr. Hagopian's experience and expertise. So I would like to hope that saving some of those trees were explored, but I can see it's a little difficult for us to just on the surface, try to make changes to something that I'm sure you've spent months and sometimes years working through all the details. Just on the surface level, I would say off the bat, the design, although it's contemporary, I have no issues with contemporary design. It does read as a little bit massy and boxy, if you would. But again, I don't know how to solve that by giving some sort of, constructive criticism here. So I think you've maintained proper relationships and adjacencies. I just maybe it's a material choice we can discuss if fellow board members agree. Maybe that white coping at the top is reading a little harsh. The rear retaining wall, I do think it would be beneficial to split that into two, but I wouldn't want to pose a condition on the homeowner that would be, much more costly and extensive. Albeit I'm sure they would appreciate a nicer yard in the end than coming outside to a 15-foot high wall. So I'm a little torn, but I think they've solved, challenges in a nice way. But I don't know if I can offer any criticism that would help, or offer any conditions really that would help change the design drastically. And that's where I stand.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Guy. For my part, I concur with Board Member Smith in feeling that the mitigation plan on offer here seems wholly insufficient. And as Mr. Kiesel pointed out, for all intents and purposes, the ordinance that surrounded these conditional use permits around excavation and slopes and things like that were done away with, and instead it's up to us. So we, for all intents and purposes, are playing the role of dealing with these conditions. So I think that's, in this case, it is something that we should really be talking about, because these trees are an enormous asset to Glendale, to this neighborhood. And I was really kind of shocked that they'd be just disposed of in such a cavalier way and mitigated with just a grouping of non-mature trees in a very tightly packed pattern, because there's not a lot of other space on the site to be able to put them. So they seemed, a little closely spaced. And, as was pointed out, when we've seen mitigations for oak trees in the past, it's like a 3-to-1 or 4-to-1 ratio. So a 1-to-1 ratio, I understand that's, the minimum that is stipulated. But I still feel that, considering the quality of these trees and the number of them, and having scaled up that hillside over the weekend, very, very carefully, of course, and being among those trees, it's truly a magical place. And so I, for one, think that more work needs to be done to see what could be done to mitigate this. And I understand what you're saying with Member Chagayan, but at the same time, I think that there can be other efforts. I think that some of the discussions about perhaps, narrowing the house, split levels, pushing the house a little bit further back, even if that raises it up a little bit as it steps up, I think should be considered. Because I don't think that sufficient effort was done to try to mitigate this. I think, as Board Member Smith pointed out, the design guidelines are quite clear. We should be putting that as a primary focus. It shouldn't be just because this is how we laid out the house in this boxy shape with this big, prison yard kind of patio in the back. That doesn't mean we have to just accept that. So I think that we are here to impose the guidelines and interpret the guidelines. And so I am more inclined to request that the applicant go back and attempt to seek other solutions here, to work with staff on this, and see what can be done. I mean, I like the design in general. I don't have a huge amount of comments about the design itself. I do think that it is not really following the topography. The first floor with the living room, it actually sits, right at the 15-yard setback. And the garage is 3 feet below that. So the floor below is actually, the door of the garage is inset by 3 feet. So I don't consider that really following the topography of the site. I understand the second floor is set back from the first, but it's would be considered the bare minimum. And I think that the design could be better executed to step all of the stories further back, building them into the hillside, maybe, creating opportunities for larger balconies that face the street, or a roof deck, or, other things that can be done that can, shape the design to more meet the topography, as well as to work around the trees. So that's my opinion. Anyone care to opine or comment back? Board Member Smith, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that was very well put, and I think Commissioner Chagayan's comments as well. I think altogether, our comments, when really viewed correctly, would point to, I'm not certain, well, it feels to me like a redesign where it would be demonstrated in the design why all these trees can't be retained. Perhaps a smaller residence would be more appropriate. I agree about the colors. Actually, the La Habra stucco color, that the aspen is pretty near white. It's just barely ivory. I think it should be darker to blend in with the hillside more, or maybe consider something else. And what I may be deducing from what Commissioner Welsh said is rather than a 1-to-1 mitigation ratio, that we consider 1-to-2, and that instead of 15-gallon trees, which I think are, I don't know how to nicely say, sort of an insult to oak trees, I believe that the 1-to-2 would be include specimen trees that were 36-inch boxes, I think half of them, and the other half could be 24-inch boxes. If the other board members agreed with that, I had come up with a more elaborate ratio, but I think that this is the most understandable. Are you saying something, Belia?
Yes, Board Member Smith and DRB board members. The size of the replacement trees, I think, probably should be discussed first with our city's arborist and the arborist of record, simply because specimen trees of a 36-inch box or larger, or 48-inch box, we have been told that those larger trees are not conducive to being planted in a hillside yet, because the smaller the tree ball, the better the root system that it's going to actually take in the hillside. So I would, at this point in time, instead of identifying that in the conditional approval, relay that for consultation with the arborist of record and our city's arborist. So
I would suggest the same for the ratio. The board's direction is clear that you want to see more replacement trees than are proposed, but depending on the limited amount of space, the arborist may have something to say about spacing. So I think as much as we can defer to their expertise, but with the direction of maximizing the number of replacement trees.
And I'm so.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I spoke with Urban Forester regarding the site, regarding the mitigation plan, and just to concur with what Villia said. Typically, the smaller 15-gallon trees adjust better and have a better survival rate than the larger trees. And at some point, those smaller trees, and I don't know the particulars with the oak trees, the smaller trees end up being the same size as the larger trees. And it may take a while for the oaks, but that's just what I wanted to input.
I appreciate all of those. I had looked them up. I had seen something about the root balls. Yes, oak trees will eventually be the size of the larger ones. It just takes a lot of years. So I think we're on the right track for hopefully increasing that mitigation ratio, because it is truly wholly insufficient. The color of the finishes, and also I think the rectilinearity of the design, and that's just detailing, could be reduced in order to give the facade a softer appearance, so that it would fit in better to the hillside than its current rectilinear presentation, if that makes sense. So those are some of my ideas.
Okay. Board Member Chagayan, I know you said that you couldn't really think of things, but any thoughts or reactions?
Yes, I guess, I mean, that's why I asked about the split level design, because I feel like, as Board Member Smith said, there is this horizontal boxiness to the design currently. And while I appreciate that each level was stepped back. I think it would help if the volumes were articulated a little bit more to give it a little less of a boxy look, and really with the stucco and the color choices, and then the darker glass in the rendering, it felt a little bit more commercial to me than it did, you know, residential. And just because it's contemporary, I understand when it's flat roofs and it has that feel. I think if we can just give it a little bit more finesse and articulation, it'll help break up the mess of the building.
Is there any possibility for me to talk?
Unfortunately, Mr. Hagopian, we did close the public hearing, so I don't think that's going to be appropriate at this point, unless there were board members that had questions for him. But so, Board Member Smith and Board Member Chagayan, is there a consensus about whether we can find conditions to approve this, or do we have more of a consensus for a return for redesign?
Can I answer your question with another question? Did
Okay.
you feel, based on all of our comments, approving with conditions would even be an option?
Not for me.
Right. Okay. So I feel like the consensus is, and I will, I guess, make the motion that we ask the applicant to return for redesign and take into consideration all of the comments that were made tonight.
So before we try and move that forward, Jay and Roger, do you want to recap any of the discussion comments to incorporate into the motion, or do you feel that you have sufficient?
Sure. Give me a second.
Okay, turn those lights on.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Okay. I think the overall condition, and we can wordsmith this, is restudy the design of the house to better integrate it with the topography and existing oak trees. Does that capture your kind of overall concern?
I think so. From my part, Board Member Smith is raising her hand. She might want to amend that.
I would add, and I didn't quite hear it, the size of the house, if it can retain more oak trees, reduce the size.
Okay.
And I'll give you a percentage if I have no idea how the other board members feel. I would say 10%.
Okay.
And I mean 10%, sorry.
Okay.
Given that we're trying to save trees, I don't know that a percentage is the right way to look at that, because if trees on the, we know that some trees are going to be lost. When you look at the lot, there's absolutely no way to build here without 5 trees being lost minimum. If we're pulling it in from the sides and changing its orientation, we might save some trees on the sides, but that might be a 15%. So I don't want to kind of limit this, because
The number would be at least 10%. And if there were a compelling reason not to, if there were a way to do something else, then we would listen to it. In the last case, we just heard sort of no. So it's to study it, including its size.
Okay.
Yeah, I concur with that. I mean, when they submit a new case, a return, the case will be heard de novo. So the conditions that we put here are guidelines and guidance to them, for them to understand what our thinking is. It's not necessarily that they're ironclad rules. I think the goal is fundamentally about saving more trees and better articulating the design so that it blends more into the topography. Those are the primary goals. Reducing the size of the house I think would probably be necessary, but that's really more secondary to the two primary objectives.
Then, if I'm not repeating what was already said, I think it wasn't yet. Would be reduce the boxiness and articulate the proposed rectilinear design to be more compatible with the hillside setting. Is that too vague?
No, I think that sounds good.
Another potential condition that actually could fall under the first one is consider a split level design.
Okay.
Should I just include that sort of as part of the condition number 1?
Yeah, it should be.
That's fine.
Can I just ask a generic question? When it's a return for redesign and we're calling them conditions, do they have to hit all the marks, or is it more of a, here are options that we would like you to explore? I mean, I understand when it's approved with conditions, we're saying hit every single one. But because of the nature of this project in particular and the challenge of the site, I'm just asking
Yeah,
to understand.
What we would normally do, especially with something like the split level, I'm not convinced right now that a split level is going to solve any problems. But what we can do when we talk about reducing the boxiness of the design, basically Board Member Smith's distilled comment, we can do something where we'll often say, using design concepts such as considering a split level design, stepping the facade further. We'll have a short list probably to give guidance, but not definite direction.
And then it would be up to the board at the time, as constituted at the time of a resubmittal, to decide that. And like I said, it would be a de novo case, so they don't have to take any of our considerations into mind, but typically we do, or the board at the time would take some of those things into consideration.
Understood. Thank you.
Another comment I had was use darker colors to blend to allow the house to blend more into the hillside.
In keeping with the design guidelines, I think the words are earth tone.
Okay, thank you. And then there was an overall concern that the mitigation plan was inadequate, and the applicant, and in conjunction with staff and the urban forester, should work to sort of ad-libbing this right now, work to amend the mitigation plan with the intent of providing more than a 1-to-1 ratio.
Or increasing the ratio to a more suitable connection, a more suitable.
I just think increasing the ratio is fine. So.
Okay. Okay. Those were the conditions, or those are the comments that I had. Did I miss anything?
I think that was a good encapsulation. So is there somebody like to make the motion? Go ahead, Board Member Smith.
I think there was a motion already.
Oh, that's right. Yes, that's Board Member Chagayan. Okay, so Board Member Chagayan, let me ask you, given the layout of the conditions as laid out by Mr. Kiesel, you're confirming your original motion?
That is correct.
Okay. Is there a second?
Yeah. Is there a second?
I second it.
Okay. A motion was made to return the project for redesign with a number of suggested conditions. This will be a roll call. Ms. Shagain,
Yes.
Ms. Smith,
Yes.
and Mr. Welsh.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries 3-0. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we are on to our third and final case for the night. Board Member Chagayan, yes, you have a question? Do you want to take a break or
Sorry.
something?
Yeah, 2 minutes.
Okay, that's
Do you
fine.
mind? Okay.
No, not at all. Okay, so we'll take a short break, and when we return in a couple of minutes, we'll continue with the next case.
Can you let me know, Delia, too?
Okay, it looks like we are returned from our recess. So we are ready to move on to the final case of the night for Kennington. So I'll turn it over to Ms. Toledo.
See my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay. 1 second. Okay, board members, good evening. This last item before you is case number PDR 21000167, located at 2745 Kennington Drive. The lot size is 10,307 square feet. It is a vacant uphill lot. The applicant is proposing to construct a 3,020 square foot, 3-story single family residence with an attached 791 square foot garage. The subject site has an average current slope of 74.1% and 64.1 average current slope for the building footprint area. The project proposes to grade approximately 1,657 cubic yards of cut and export 1,657 cubic yards of earth in conjunction with the project. And while 63% of the lot will remain ungraded. The new house will provide 1,483 square foot of livable area on the main floor, which would be essentially the second floor, and 1,246 square feet of livable area on the upper floor, which is the third level, and a roof deck. The project will also include the construction of retaining walls directly in front of the house, adjacent to the driveway, and 3 successive retaining walls behind the house, with landscape and an orchard planted between the walls at the rear. And the project is exempt from CEQA as Class 3 new construction. This is the subject site. Again, it's an undeveloped uphill 10,307 square foot lot. Some site views. The project again is vacant. It has an irregular shape located on the north side of Kennington Drive. The topography of the lot slopes upward from the street front property line with a valley at the front of the lot, roughly from the center to the right side of the property. And the lot has, again, I mentioned the average current slope is 74.1% for the entire. The lot is located in the high fire zone area, and there is an existing earthquake fault line standing across the property. The new 3-story house relates to the surrounding context, since the majority of the homes in the neighborhood are 3 stories, and those are identified on the location map that was also included in your packet. The homes across the street are located on downhill slope properties, also feature 3 levels with the garage located at street level, and then the main living areas are underneath. And the lots directly adjacent to the subject site are undeveloped, and the parcel adjacent to the rear is vacant, and it is zoned SR, which is special recreation. So as I indicated earlier, the project proposes 63% of ungraded open space, which complies with the zoning code. The project this allows for preservation of prominent natural features and open space. The hillside guidelines recommend that projects eliminate the use of excessive retaining walls, with some grading being preferable, and to minimize the use of retaining walls to modify landforms, especially those visible from the street. And the use of retaining walls to create backyards in hillside areas is not appropriate. So this also includes the use of multiple retaining walls for purposes of creating a fruit orchard. So the landscape should be introduced to minimize the visual impact of the retaining walls. And we have included a condition to that effect to either to eliminate if those retaining walls are not necessary. And I'll discuss the orchard a little bit further on in the presentation as it relates to the to landscaping. Now, going back to retaining walls, unless the retaining walls are required to comply with building code. So similarly, these successive retaining walls along the pedestrian walkway should be eliminated and are minimized. So the front yard, again, is also proposing retaining walls. Staff is suggesting, if possible, the retaining walls be eliminated, those within close proximity to the street, if natural grading can be applied. And also to consider reorienting the lower portion of the entry stairs towards the driveway in order to extend a landscaped area in the front of the stairs and provide a more natural, ungraded appearance and soften the appearance from the street. The project proposes a flat roof with variations in height, which is consistent and appropriate to and reinforces the contemporary style of the house. The flat roof lends itself to the roof deck, and accessibility is from the interior staircase. Regarding the landscape, they are proposing 76%. The entire site is proposed to be landscape. The landscape palette does feature a variety of fruit trees, as I had mentioned earlier, and other trees, some of which are not California friendly nor drought tolerant. And to the point I made earlier regarding the orchards at the rear of the house, they are not appropriate for a hillside development because, again, the guidelines direct that all landscapes should be drought tolerant. And according to the landscape designer, the plant palette will comply with the model water efficient landscape ordinance, better known as MWILO. Hillside properties, however, should reflect native plants that are fire resistant and provide more of a natural look, minimizing the visual impact and size of the intervention like buildings and decks, etc., into the natural hill, and provide a landscape design contemporary to the site and building design, especially on sloped areas. And so we're suggesting a condition, as I mentioned earlier, to revise the plant palette and propose all California-friendly landscaping, drought tolerant, that is appropriate to the hillside lot, and to comply with all the recommendations of the city's urban forester, to utilize a native plant landscape palette appropriate to hillside. And that includes, for example, California walnut, toyon, and scrub oaks, in addition to larger trees such as oak, bay, and sycamore trees. The ground level features a 2-car garage, accessible from Kennington Drive via the new 37-foot, 7-inch deep driveway. And the driveway is 16 feet, 2 inches wide. The driveway features permeable pavers with turf stone, which is appropriate. The garage and interior staircase, or in this case, in the garage area, there is access to an interior staircase, which leads to the upper floors and the roof deck. The second level features living, dining, kitchen, and secondary bedrooms. And then the front entry covered porch, which is approximately 41 square feet. And just to highlight, I don't know if you could see my cursor, this would be the front entry. And the reason why I'm highlighting it is because we do have some suggested conditions about that, which I will describe later in the presentation. The third level features bedrooms, like master bedrooms, secondary bedrooms, and 179 square foot of open balcony area. And in terms of the massing, again, due to the site's uphill slope, the taller massing is appropriate located on the upslope side of the property. The building proposes an overall height of 32 feet, which is consistent with the zoning code, and the project is consistent with the comprehensive and hillside design guidelines because it fits well with the surrounding building fabric. The new 3-story house relates to the surrounding context since the majority of the homes in the neighborhood are 3 stories. And the design of the new home appropriately articulates a massive scale through its use of design and detailing. The main entryway to the house, again, as I indicated earlier, is located on the 2nd level below the 3rd floor balcony, open and visible to the street. The design is properly scaled and integrated in the house. However, its design lacks interest and detailing as a focal point. And so a suggested condition is to redesign and enhance the entry doorway to the building as a focal point entrance. Development, I guess I mentioned earlier, features a contemporary design that employs a variety of geometric volumes and a mix of materials for architectural effect. And the design, as you can see, is nestled into the hillside. Some renderings. The proposed material palette includes a variety of finishes, board formed concrete, hardy, vertical siding, smooth stucco finish, glass railing, and dark color window frames. The project proposes vinyl windows, sliding operation, and recess within the opening. The style and operation are appropriate to the house and the design as well. However, a condition is included to use a higher quality material for the windows, such as fiberglass. And also regarding the light fixtures or the sconces, a modern design for the light sconce is proposed. However, a condition, and it's appropriate in terms of the design, and it complements the house. However, a condition is included to ensure that the lighting on the steps shall be from the side with light directed toward the interior of the steps as opposed to shining towards the street. So I've summarized some of the conditions within my presentation. There's a total of 7. Staff is recommending approval of the project with the suggested 7 conditions. And before I conclude, we did receive 4 letters or email correspondence in opposition to the project, and they're from a few of the neighbors, and there were concerns about the integrity of the hillside. Some expressed concern about privacy issues or potential privacy concerns, and also construction traffic as a result or driven from construction. And with that, I will conclude my remarks. If there's any questions, I am available.
Thank you. Do board members have any questions for Ms. Toledo? No. Okay, so I guess we can move to the applicant and hear from the applicant and whoever is going to represent them.
Good evening. My name is Benny Arias. I'm the applicant. My address is 1610 West 7th Street, Los Angeles, California, 90017. As Milka discussed, we are trying to propose a 3-story hillside residence. What you see on my screen is the existing hillside overlaid with the house itself. To make this short, I just want to point out at least a response to the approval with conditions. Just to let you know that we have taken into consideration these points. We've been in the process for a little bit over 2 years. So the one thing we do want to do is try to reach the finish line in agreement. In regards to the retaining walls itself, as you can see in the overlay, the 3 walls that we propose in the back are necessary or are designed based on the CBC code, and the zoning code limits the height of how we separate these walls. So at the end of the day, when we try to maximize the design and limit the walls, unfortunately, the existing hillside constraints conflict with our desire to try to minimize and comply when it comes to retaining walls. When you see in the front, everything is covered. The only flat patch we have is on the property line and 10 feet over where our driveway begins, and it's essentially covered. There is no way to not use retaining walls and propose the minimum slope allowed by zoning in order to minimize its use. The way we have it presented to our ability is at least the design we believe we've worked towards in order to minimize or at least try to use as little walls we can to avoid this conflict. In regards to the focal point of the entrance, the entrance was proposed to us by the planning staff. Ideally, we would want to do it, or at least we proposed it here where it's hidden from view. I'm gonna switch my screen to something that's a little bit more pleasing. So we had proposed it down the middle. As we designed the project, it became very apparent that its focal point was really the access to the multiple levels of the site. So in our head, the focal point will actually be this mid-level entrance, which guides you down to the garage and to the main entrance of the kitchen living room. When it comes to point number 3, the existing mass we already discussed. Unfortunately, these are our site conditions. We've done many variations where we attempted to propose a house in front of the property, but a lot of excavating would have to be done, and we try to minimize the excavation to the front of the property. In regards to the landscape, we got an email from our landscape who couldn't be here tonight. He just wanted clarity or direction in regards to the code stating that we can only use California natives. We provided calculations and plans for plans that comply with the MOILO. So he just wants clarification in order so we can make this happen. For the windows, no problem. We're okay with fiberglass. And in regards to the lighting, I just wanted to point out that the spec we provided, the lighting goes down on the step to the side. It wouldn't really point towards the street. So if we could get further clarification on what the idea would be behind that, we'd appreciate it so we could update it. But besides that, I think everything else is pretty doable. And if you have any questions, just let me know.
So, Mr. Arias, in regards to condition number 1, where they're asking to eliminate those retaining walls, and I understand your presentation, but do you have any objection to leaving this condition in, and then just basically trying to work with building and safety to minimize them to the extent possible?
We have been working with building and safety.
Okay.
Earlier this year, we had the civil engineer, which he's going to talk on his behalf, and the soils submitted to them in order to try to find the best solution to this. Like I stated earlier, these retaining walls are used for the building integrity. Without them, we're basically underneath the mountain. So we've tried different approaches, and we still believe that this is the best condition. We're more than willing to work with you guys again, but I think we've talked to building and safety about this.
Okay, do you have someone else who's also going to speak on this? If so, I'd like to bring them in so we can get your presentation concluded.
Daniel, Siri.
Yeah, so I'm actually the soils engineer. My name is Cyrus. So the retaining walls are just like the other second project that we discussed tonight is about H/2. So to provide the setback, and then the upper wall will be used like as an impact wall, and during the design life of the project will be basically maintained to basically clean up any kind of debris. There is not much debris. There is about 2 feet of topsoil underlain by granitic bedrock. So all those walls are basically put in to provide H/2 as required by the building code.
Okay. Board members, questions for the applicants? Yes, Board Member Chagayan.
Actually. Yes, Mr. Arias, you mentioned that previous designs you had laid out the entry to be in the center. Can you speak a little bit more about that and how we ended up with the entry basically another flight up and over to the left?
As stated by the staff report, it was suggested that it should be a dominant feature. So that's the main reason for adding the entrance on top. Not always was it the intent to have it up there, as it does intrude and kind of going all the way up there to the highest point just to enter the house. Whereas you could enter midpoint and kind of climb up or climb down depending on where you're going.
Okay, but the design always had that additional stair that led you up to that other level where the current entry is.
I don't believe so. The front has changed extensively. We've had entrances from the front, like project number 2, from the side, from the garage. And at the end, it was determined that we needed entrance or a path of travel from the street. So then that kind of dictated where the entrance or the point of entrance would be to our residence.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Board Member Smith.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I have a question about the types of piles that are proposed to be used. Could you all, I'm not sure who among you can answer that.
Yeah, so I'm the geotech, I can answer that. So all, to construct all those walls, all the excavations needs to be shored with the drill caissons. And then when the caissons are drilled, then afterwards, excavation is going to start and those walls are going to be created.
Thanks. And how deep are the caissons?
The caissons are going to be designed by the shoring design engineer. I don't have that answer, but typically from my experience, it's just about 20 feet.
Okay, thank you.
These are short height walls, 5 foot each, but they're going to be stepped.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions for the applicant? Okay. Ms. Toledo, I have a question, if we can return to it, on condition number 3, where it says reorient the lower portion of the entry stairs towards the driveway. Is that proposing that we completely eliminate all of the stairs that lead down to the street and just have them go to the driveway? Or can you explain what the intent is here?
I'll step in for Milka. The idea was to actually try to minimize the impact of that bowling alley look that you have of the stairs coming down. so that maybe you could extend the landscaping across the bottom of the site and have the stairs do like a short L shape and take the last couple stairs in the perpendicular direction.
Okay, so just the lower portion of the stairs. So
Lower portion.
bulk of the stairs would still be there, but just the lower portion closest to the street, you'd have a right angle. Okay, I understand. Okay. Okay. Seeing no more hands raised, I think we can move to public comment on this. Do we have callers?
Yes, we have one caller, Victoria Valentine. Ms. Valentine, you're live on the air with the Design Review Board.
Hello.
Hello. Yes, you're live on the air with the Design Review Board.
Hello. Hello.
Yes, you're live on the air with the Design Review Board.
Oh, I thought they haven't finished presenting their case. Are you doing the public comments now?
Yes, you are live on the air with the Design Review Board.
Okay. I have a couple of concerns. There is okay, this is a mountain. It's a snake. But I'm sure Mr. Kiesel will find in the records that those mountain ridges have names. They have names and they're on the maps. He just needs to pull them out. This is not a Target parking lot. So I never got a notice. I like Mr. Kiesel to show me the list who received the notice about this project. And Chevy Chase Drive, 2600 block, the entire block is right below this project. There is no access to the public. I just found out today that there's a hearing. I can't see anybody on the screen. Everything is blur. The pictures, they have been deceitfully presented side by side, when this is going to be towering over the mountain on top, 3 stories, he says. That means the cut is already 50 feet tall from the street. That's the mountain cut. Some of that property is public property for the road to be completed. Then another 37 feet on top of it, that will make already 100 feet tall tower that's going to hover over the resident below. Not below, on the street. Plus, the cut will have to be encased in cement walls, so he will be seeing like an apartment building with some units up on top. The frame, I looked at it, it's very deceiving. It's a deceit. It needs to be properly placed so that it could be seen. Of course, and San Rafael Estates, they all have to get that notice. This is an obnoxious destruction of the mountain in an effort to change the character of Sycamore Canyon Tract. Natural gullies and swales are very important. This is a very narrow curve, a snake, a narrow curve. And fire department, so this has been already approved for putting a house on instead of looking at the area, at the topographic map. I'm totally confused. First, you have to see where this is going to go. Then there is no street. Oh, the people across the street on Olympic, they would love to put their houses on a street it's not existing. This is not a street that is acceptable for Glendale. It has no curb. it has to be properly measured. And like I said, the borders, they have to show the true borders. No utilities. They have to show the plans, how the sewer and the gas will be connected. Water runoff. This is a gully, a swale where the natural waters are running from the mountains, and they are so important for the well-being of the mountains. They will have to build and show the plan for containment of the water runoff, not just let it go down the hill and affect other the properties below, all the way down to Chevy Chase. They'll have to build a basin where the water will be flowing into the ocean to protect the properties below. This whole meeting is not accessible to the public. I can't see. I don't see the names. I need to see the plans. And to show the plans where the water will be directed. There is a ridge, right? Somebody had excavated, making room to turn around or something. There is a ridge, a huge ridge, like an eagle rock is sitting in the middle there. That will be excavated. They have to show how much dirt will be, hillsides will be moved. Then,
Okay.
I'm totally unprepared. Access to the street. So, this is all against hillside ordinance. And if you take the
Ma'am, you're out of time, so I have to
no,
ask you
I'm
to complete your
interested.
comments.
Mr. Hagopian loves the oak trees. He loves the game to play with the oak trees. They have excavated roots at 2600 block building, which he excavated the entire root system and created a criminal situation, a deadly
Thank you,
hazard
ma'am.
for the citizens or
Yeah.
pedestrians
Okay.
walking there.
Okay, we have to move on now. You've had your time. Thank you so much for your call. Okay, are there any other callers?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
We have
Go ahead.
the next caller is Carl Greenblatt. Carl Greenblatt, you're on the air with the Design Review Board.
Hello, how are y'all doing? Basically, so I'm a neighbor that lives across the street from. Oh, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Oh, okay, great. So I'm a neighbor who lives across the street. My biggest issue right now is when I look out the main front window of my house and I see where they've put up the rods with the strings kind of show the, I don't know what you call those, but anyway, they've got those out there. So I'm basically seeing the west side and the south side of the house and the whole bedroom. I'm looking straight into where that bedroom is going to be, right into my house. So there's no privacy between my house and that whole bedroom balcony. So I don't know if there's a way to put up some privacy. So I'm the next house down there, that one. And basically the window looking out is straight into that side there. So the two issues that I really worry about are, one, I'm looking straight into their bedroom and they're looking straight into my house. You can see there's a giant window right there. And on the rooftop balcony as well. And then the second issue I worry about is the hillside crumbles all the time, anytime there's rain, anything like that. So what assurances are they going to set up that the whole hillside is not just going to topple down during construction right into my front yard? Or later on. So those are the two concerns that I have on this right now.
Okay, thank you, sir.
All right, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Next caller, please.
We have no other callers for this evening.
No other callers. Okay. Mr. Arias, would you like to comment on some of the public commentary we've received?
Yes, so we've taken the comments and we discussed with Milka briefly. In regards to the height of the house and setbacks, I believe we are pretty reasonable where it has separation amongst the front house across the street. If we're talking about privacy issues, those two houses are piercing down to Chevy Chase Canyon. So how can we have privacy issues, or what defines what a privacy issue is? When it comes to the skylights, I think the neighbor across was saying that their skylight looks into the house. Another privacy issue is we're not looking directly into the house. The place, or at least the way we see it, the way we're placed, we're looking above the houses. We're not looking directly at the houses at any point. And I don't think it's the client's intent to look at your neighbors when they're at their house either. But we have taken into consideration the privacy issues. The geological issues have been talked about with building and safety. We've been back and forth in regards to the bedrock in itself, in its placement, the stormwater that runs on site. Once again, the owner is only liable for the stormwater on his site, which we will be mitigating and containing as necessary. As far as construction noise that came from other comments, these are just typical construction methods. We will be using best BMPs to the best of our ability to mitigate all complaints we can, noise, sound, as much as we can. But that's pretty much it.
Okay, thank you very much. I believe we can close the hearing now unless board members have any more questions. No? Okay. So we will move to board member deliberations at this moment in time. So board member Chagayan, I'll let you go first this time.
Sorry, yes. Okay, so all in all, I think this project, for me anyway, in terms of overall design, it's architecturally pleasing. I appreciate that there is articulation and volumes, that there is a larger setback from the street than the minimum. Just overall in terms of site planning, I think the architect has done a fine job in placing it, locating it, and trying to mitigate the water with and adding retaining walls as necessary. Staff report with all the conditions, I would say I agree with all of them. The entry doorway is, it's a little bit vague in terms of like redesigning to enhance it. I honestly, at first glance, I immediately did assume that the entry was in the center of the home until I started looking at the plans a little bit deeper and realized that it was actually up another half level and towards the front. So I am open to, if Mr. Arias has a version where it was previously in the center, unless staff wants to elaborate on the reasons why. Maybe one of the solutions is not wrapping that master balcony over top of the entry and creating a different kind of statement for the entry. I think there are different ways to look at it. But I also really appreciate the amount of landscaping that's being proposed for the hillside. I think it will enhance it. For the neighbors that called, so for privacy issues, it's not within our purview to comment on, I don't believe, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. And then again, construction concerns are, of course, always a concern for hillside projects. I think that's just a given, and oftentimes, believe it or not, even a homeowner or client themselves are concerned with building on hillside, but there are plenty of checks and balances that go into a typical hillside construction that I hope and feel that everyone can take comfort in knowing, as Mr. Arias stated, best management practices etc. So all in all, I'm in favor of the project. I think they did a nice job of stepping it back, and although it's 3-story, I feel like with Hillside, it's sort of comes with the territory, right? Like the other houses surrounding it, and design-wise, I think it's a nice project, and I'm in support of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Smith? You're still on mute, Board Member Smith.
Thanks. Sorry, it slipped somehow. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So in looking at this, I agree with Board Member Chagayan's basic intent that this is nicely designed and so forth. I also agree with Board Member Chagayan regarding hillside development. I know it's always challenging. I think not only the contractors are challenged, the neighbors are challenged. It's going to be difficult, but it's a very narrow street. I think we got many more letters than we had callers. So I was looking at the residential district additional ROS and R1R development standards, and I see that it directs under Hillside Development Review Policy A1, and then it's letter B. It says development shall be compatible with the surrounding neighborhood in terms of size, scale, bulk mass, roofline orientation, setbacks, and site layout. So one thing I'm concerned about is the size. There are houses over 3,000 square feet in the neighborhood, but the average size is just over 1,000 square feet and change. So I will say this seems large. Some of my other ideas, and I do agree, I think this is a better thought out design than most we receive. I will temper that with the fact that I often have comments. I believe the central spine is a little bit too prominent, and it makes the residence really look like two separate residences. So I would recommend that they experiment with exchanging volumes among those bays so that it doesn't look like two separate small apartment buildings. And I'm not sure if my colleagues will agree with that. I did see some little design detailing that connects it, but it seems pretty tenuous. These aren't in very particular order. I believe the proposed stucco is too white, and that in order to comply with the requirements in the design guidelines for Hillside, they should replace the white stucco with a darker, more earth tone color. This is about the central spine. The planter boxes that separate the front steps and the very wide driveway, I think there could be a different element that would avoid separating the two things so much. It's just someone else called it a bowling alley. I don't agree, but it's very it's just the spine is too prominent. I really think that the cast concrete board forms are great, and it's a nice use of materials in that area. I was concerned as well about the orchard and the just the early watering and the retaining walls. So I agree with most of staff's conditions. I'm concerned about the 16-foot wide driveway. I thought it was supposed to be 12. I could be wrong. The glass railing, I will say, is kind of severe when the rest of the design, while well thought out, is a little bit warmer. So I would recommend that they consider a different material that would be more compatible with the contemporary design language they're already using. I think a plain garage door rather than the garage door that has the 3 stacked lights would be more compatible. I think that the garage volume, instead of being white stucco, should at very least be the same color as the concrete or close. and at best maybe be that same material. I was concerned about the number of retaining walls. As I said previously, with that irrigation system. And the last thing is pretty easy. It's just iterating again. Consider incorporating the garage a little bit better into the overall composition. And with regard to the front door, I lived in a Gregory Ain and studied Gregory Ain, and I'm very familiar with front doors being at right angles. But I do believe that the entry needs to be without being overly blingy or calling too much attention to itself. I think the entry could be better defined for for the pizza guy and all the people who will come door to door to sell you magazines. So those are my essential thoughts on this.
Okay, thank you, Board Member Smith. For my comments, I quite like the design of this. I think that the way that they have stepped it back further from the street than we saw in the earlier house, I think makes all the difference here. And the spine, as Board Member Smith calls it, it doesn't bother me. In fact, it was one of the things that I kind of liked about it, because it did actually make it almost look like it was separating it into two houses, and to me that lessened the mass for what is really a wider house. It made me think of that Corona project, which was so wide, and an application like this where you literally try to create a break, could have helped a situation like that. So it doesn't bother me. In fact, what it means to me is that is actually quite a prominent feature. So to me, that is where the entry should be. I think Board Member Chagayan was alluding to that as well, because I think that really is the more logical place. I don't quite accept that the entry as proposed is the best location. In fact, I'm not even sure that there should be that second half staircase up there. I think that can be a balcony, and we should maybe make more attention drawn to that central spine area and reinforce that as the main entry. I think that's the appropriate location. I think in practice, the door being there, everyone would use it. The owners of the house would use it as their primary entrance. So I think we should just accept that it is the first door that we would arrive at. It seems the logical place. So that would be my opinion on the matter. I do concur with Board Member Smith about the color. I think that's again, the design guidelines are pretty clear. We should be using earth tone colors. So a little bit darker, more earth tone, I think is appropriate, and I would recommend we add a condition for that. If we have to stick with these retaining walls above them, I would suggest we just do as much as possible to disguise them, blend them in, cover them over with materials, whatever we can do, because they do seem to be like a big sore thumb. And this house will be very prominently visible from houses across the canyon there. So it's not something that will be obscured from by the house from the street. Yes, it will, but there's lots of houses across the canyon that will be seeing that. And so anything that we can do to minimize the impact of those visually from further away would be appropriate. And let's see, what else did I have in here for my notes? Yeah, that's it. I like the design overall. I think the architect has done a good job here, and so I'm in support of the project with the conditions and some slight modifications that we've added here. Does Ms. Toledo, do you want to comment about the entryway, because I think we slightly differ on that. So can you want to comment on why you think that the upper entry was more appropriate?
I would need to go back to my notes if I recall. Whether I do agree with the board's comment about it being more towards the center or spine, if you will. looking at it more closely, having it along the side where it's located now, it seems a little undescript, if you will. So I wouldn't be opposed at all to the board's suggestion. I just, at this time, it's been so long, I'd have to go back to my notes to see why why our design group went in that direction. So.
Yep, no problem. So Ms. Chagayan, maybe I was inferring more in what you were saying, but do you concur with what I was saying here?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
So I heard several conditions. I seem to have heard, and I guess I'll also defer to Jay or Chris to chime in if I missed something. But I heard the board be in agreement with the conditions, unless there was one that I didn't hear any of them to be stricken from the list. Did I miss something there?
No, I think the only one would be number one, putting some clarifications on that, because, obviously if it is required by building department, then that's okay. But doing what we can to minimize the visibility of them. So
yes, and then I had a comment to reduce the visual impact of retaining walls as much as possible by screening them, perhaps introducing more, I don't know, maybe cascading landscaping or something, or maybe some vertical growth, if you will, to screen the walls.
We'd also have the color should use a darker or earth tone colors. And then on the conditions that we had listed, I just questioned the one. I sense that you're saying regarding the stairs and reorienting L shape that that's not necessary to do.
Oh, no, I didn't apply that. I just wanted clarification on that one when I asked you about that. Yeah, I just wanted clarification.
So what's the preference there?
Are you talking about condition number 3?
Yes.
I think condition number 3 is fine to leave it as it is. I didn't hear anyone objecting to that. I think the one that we need to be talking about is condition number 2, which was to redesign and enhance the entry doorway. I think we need to just amend that to be more about speaking towards having the entryway at the split level and or along the spine, as it was called. And I think the staircases will need to be reworked there, because I know that there's a staircase in the middle there, which you'd want to eliminate that. You'd want to have a nice flat pad for that entry area. So I think some of the staircasing would need to be reworked. But I think that generally speaking, what we should say is to redesign the stair and entry area to reinforce the main entry at the midpoint of the house, at the landing of the stairs on the split level.
Okay.
That sound right, Board Member Chagayan, Board Member Smith? Okay, good.
Yes.
All right.
There was one other condition regarding the garage that Board Member Smith was suggesting to go with a plain garage door. Did anybody agree with that?
I don't really have an objection to the garage door as it is.
And she also had a concern with the glass railings being rather severe. Was there any agreement there?
I don't really have a strong opinion. Board Member Chagayan?
Same. I don't have a strong opinion about that.
And also the planter boxes that felt like too much of a divider, but I
mean,
between the walkway and the
stair and the driveway, yeah. I mean, I don't disagree with that. I think that's work could be done there. So I'm more inclined to leave that as discretion for staff to work out something. But I think anywhere we can add more naturalness to the landscaping and the way that the retaining walls worked, I think is appropriate.
Okay.
I had heard a comment also by Board Member Smith regarding the driveway width. There was some concern that there was excessive paving. Is there a comment by the rest of the board as to redesigning the driveway maybe to start narrow and then opening up wider towards the garage?
Weren't you already suggesting that 1 foot of that be taken away as a planting strip?
Yes.
Okay.
But I wasn't sure if the board wanted to see more.
I mean, it's already permeable material, so I'm not as fussed about it, but I wouldn't object to it being narrowed a little bit either.
Okay.
Board Member Chagayan, what do you think?
Yeah, I feel like if it can be resolved just in the overall permeability and design of it, as opposed to like cutting a hard line that's very narrow, and then because for garages you have to have that backup space, so you're going to end up with this weird sort of pattern.
So it sounds like maybe then condition number 4 would kind of address that anyways. The suggested condition was to reduce excessive paving and to soften the front as much as possible without conflicting with the zoning code. So
yeah, it works for
so
me.
that would cover that. Okay.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, so I think we're clear on the conditions. Do you want to just do a quick read back for us, Milka or Chris?
Essentially, we are keeping the conditions that were outlined with every effort to make the retaining walls, if they are necessary, to minimize them in every possible way from being visible. The main entry would be, and I'm going to have to, I have to listen to the whole tape again to get these all cleared, but at the entry, it is to reinforce that central spine and relocate the entry to that center portion, reworking those stairs and eliminating that extra run, and possibly even wrapping the deck around there. We also have the color should be changed to a darker and more earth tone color. The planter boxes, we could look to see if there's a way to minimize their being such a major dividing point. And I think that was it.
Okay. Somebody like to move the motion?
I move to approve the project with the conditions per the staff report and plus the added conditions that we outlined.
I second it.
Okay, that was a motion by Board Member Chagayan to approve the project with the conditions outlined in the report, in addition to the board's conditions that you all just made. And that was a second by Board Member Smith. Roll call, Board Member Chagayan.
Yes.
Board Member Smith.
Yes.
And Chairperson Welsh.
Yes.
Motion carries 3-0. Thank you. Approved with conditions.
Very good. Thank you. And at this late hour, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All right.
Question.
Who is asking that question?
This is Jacob.
Yes.
Just with the approval of conditions, if we work out these conditions with planning and Milka, does it go back to a new DRB session?
No, it does not. You'll
No.
work out the rest with the staff.
That's all I needed. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Very good. So we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.